Hi, Thandi. Hi, welcome everyone. We'll be getting started in just a minute. Give folks a chance to join. Welcome, welcome. Welcome everyone.
Sorry about that, Jenny. I was trying to see if I can play some music while we were waiting.
You should be able to.
Well, you know how they do the how we do the share screen. I mean, share screen and share sound. Can you hear that?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's under the advanced options where you just share sound.
Oh, it's telling me I'm playing music. How cute. Just let me know when you're ready to start. What time do you want to start?
Yeah, we can go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right. At least we know it works.
It works. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Super excited to be here today for a special Mother's Day event for all kinds of mothers living with HIV. My name is Jenny Smith-Camejo. I'm Communications Director for Positive Women's Network USA. My colleague, Evany Turk, over here, our National Field Organizer, we will be co-moderating these 3 panels today. So welcome everyone. Super happy to see everyone. This is part of the PWNCares Sister Circle Project, which is an initiative by and for women living with HIV. And we are also partnering with the Well Project today on this event. So we're very excited to have that partnership going on. And if you're not familiar with Positive Women's Network, we are the premier network of women living with HIV in the US. And we are a membership organization open to all women and people of trans experience living with HIV. And we will be sending a follow-up email that will give you information on joining if you're interested. And so, yeah, we will go ahead and get started. Our first panel today is going to be around pregnancy and breastfeeding. And my colleague Evany is actually going to be leading this one.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, everyone. As Jenny said, I'm Evany Turk, the National Field Organizer for Positive Women's Network USA. It is great to be with you today. And I am excited to introduce, well, I'm not going to introduce, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but our panelist for pregnancy and breastfeeding is Ms. Cece Covin, Thandi Harris, Heather O'Connor, and Evelyn Scalice. Ladies, if you don't mind, can you briefly tell us your name, pronouns, where you live, and 2 things about yourself that you think the participants should know. We can start with whomever wants to go first.
I'll go. So my name is Sierra CC Covin, she, her, hers. I live right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in Derby. I am the program coordinator for the Well Project and almost second time mom. So my first is 10 and I'm currently pregnant now.
Thank you, Cece.
Hi, everyone. Oh, no, go ahead. Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Thandi. Was Harris, now Lenore. I just got married. I am a new mom. Thank you. He's what, almost 3 months now? No, he's over 3 months now. He's going on 4 months. And 2 things about me. I live in Las Vegas and I love yoga.
Thank you. Evelyn, you want to go?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Evelyn. I'm 33 years old. I live in upstate New York with my husband, our daughter, our 2 dogs. I have been blogging with the Well Project for a little over a year, and I found out I was positive when I got pregnant with my daughter.
Thank you. Thank you. Heather and baby.
Hi, I'm Heather O'Connor, and I am the communication specialist for ICWNA. This is Zephyr. He was taking a nap 5 minutes ago and decided to wake up just in time to see you all. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and this all out of order. And I live in Natural Bridge, Virginia. And 2 things that you should know about me. I have a 2-year-old named Aurora, and this guy who's 7 months, and his name is Zephyr. And I breastfed both of my babies, and I am trained in dance. I trained in dance all my life.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. My first question is, tell me a little bit about your pregnancy experience. It's always an experience, you know, when we are carrying the baby. So tell us a little bit about your pregnancy experience. Let's start with Cece, since you are currently pregnant.
Yay. Okay, so I will say this first. 33 and pregnant feels a lot different than 23 and pregnant, just to put that out there. Like, I don't remember all of this going on the first time. I'm tired. I just want to sleep all the time. But I feel like this time I'm so much better prepared to advocate for myself. Like, I was newly diagnosed with my first pregnancy. I was about 2 years in, and I just followed every recommendation from the doctor and felt like everything that they said was law. This time I'm a little more prepared to advocate for myself and let them know what we is and ain't gonna do and what my needs and my wants are. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Thanks, Cece. Anybody want to go next?
I'll go. My pregnancy, I found out that I was positive after my first prenatal visit. So I was very thrown off. So my whole pregnancy mostly was focused on my status and taking the medicine, and it was just a lot of fear. And I don't think I got a lot of support that I should have gotten. There was no mention of like support groups or anything like that. So my pregnancy was very stressful for me in that regard. And then I was told, you know, I couldn't breastfeed. So right off, I did like the same thing like Cece said, I did everything the doctor said. Take the medicine, don't breastfeed, C-section, don't, you know, all this stuff. So it was just very stressful.
Okay. And Evelyn, how old is your baby?
She's 5 now.
Okay, cool.
Can I go next?
Yes, please.
So with me, my pregnancy went pretty good. My pregnancy was planned. I've been diagnosed previously, 6-7 years before I had the baby, and I enjoyed my pregnancy. That was my first full pregnancy. I enjoyed touching his little feet as he was kicking in my belly. I enjoyed getting so swollen and big that it was uncomfortable, and I enjoyed all the privileges, that came with the pregnancy. Like, I was catered to, even though my feet was like swollen like sausages. And I followed up with my doctors a lot, during the care. It was a normal pregnancy. The only time I started having issues was toward, the end of the pregnancy, because they wanted to do an induction and I didn't want an induction, but they were really pushing for that induction. And that's where I felt like I was really, I was really pissed off about that. But yeah, other than that, it was a good pregnancy.
I can go. With Aurora, that pregnancy was exciting and sort of, it was not planned, but it was a surprise. And I very much was ready to listen to whatever the doctor said. I also didn't know like what happens after you find out you're pregnant. Like I remember taking the test and being like, okay, now what? Like, and I called places and I'm like, hi, I'm pregnant. What do I do next? You know? And so I ended up having my first appointment at a hospital. And during that appointment, they said that they didn't feel comfortable treating me due to my status. So they transferred me over to another hospital. And, you know, I was very much by the rules. I thought I was going to have a C-section, but I ended up having a natural birth that lasted like over 30 hours, and it was an induction. Aurora was not ready to be born. That was extremely traumatic. And I almost ended up having a C-section. But she was too far down the birth canal, and they said, you know, I could cut your bladder in half. So we're not going to do that. And it was very traumatic. With Zephyr, that pregnancy, I felt so much more confident after going through the first pregnancy. I knew how to advocate for myself, sort of like Cece was saying. And I called the shots, which was a lot better than just being told what to do. So yeah, I definitely felt more confident with that. And the birth was much better too.
That's great. I remember, I'm just thinking, listening to you guys' stories, that we probably should tell people what typically happens when you are a woman living with HIV and get pregnant. So I haven't done it in 16 years, but you guys tell me if this still works. So I remember I was diagnosed, I was already living with HIV when I got pregnant. So I knew I was pregnant already. And then they referred me to a pediatric OBGYN, and my OBGYN and my HIV specialist, I always seen them on the same day. And it seems like I was seeing them once every month. I heard Cece say she's been going to the doctor very frequently because they want to make sure you're staying healthy, and they want to make sure the baby is staying healthy and growing as they should. They switched my medicine. I'm not sure if any of that happened to you guys, but they switched my medicine because I was on medication that was not good for the baby. So that happened. And then I was going to the doctor at least once a month, 16 years ago. I don't know what's happening today, but you guys fill me in if that's still happening. Once that happened, I actually couldn't take, one of the things that I found comforting, because of my morning sickness, I could not take my medicine. It kept coming up. So we had to wait until third trimester to get me on medicine and undetectable. And I actually got undetectable within 2 weeks. And then it was fine. I had my baby naturally. I thought it was going to be like a very sterile, you have to be on a special floor with special doctors, and the doctors was going to be all, it was very natural. Like when I had my baby 26 years ago, it happened all in the same room. I didn't even have to go to a delivery room. I actually had the baby right there in my hospital room. And I did have an induction. So you guys tell me if I'm hearing that the induction part is a problem. People we all want to have our babies when they're ready to come. From my understanding, the induction was about controlling the birth, so controlling the delivery, so the babies are less exposed to HIV. I don't know, but that's what I was told back in the day. That doesn't make sense to me now, since we know what we know. So I don't know why they're still doing inductions, but that sounds like one of the issues. And you know, then I had my baby naturally. So you guys, from what you're saying, one, Miss Ella, why I can't say Evelyn? Ella, because I'm thinking my name. Evelyn.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So many people call me Evelyn. I cannot say it. You did not know you were even positive.
No.
You had a whole different experience.
Yeah, they started me on a Complera in the beginning because they said it was like the most like general pill to take. It was the safest to try because I was pregnant. And people used to ask me, did I have side effects? And at the time, I always thought no. And it wasn't until I met more people who were positive, who talked about Complera and the side effects, that I was like, oh, maybe I did. But I was pregnant at the same time. So all the throwing up and the night sweats and the crazy dreams, people were like, oh, that's the hormones. And that's from you being pregnant. And now I think back, it was probably the pills. Because even after I had my daughter, I would wake up ready to throw up for no reason. And I was also at the doctor, same thing, like every 2-3 weeks to make sure I had no resistance, to make sure that the pill was working. And then once that got settled and it looked like it was working and I was undetectable, it was pretty often, maybe at least once a month. And then I was considered high risk the whole pregnancy. So instead of a midwife, I had to see a regular OB/GYN. And they also put me to be induced because they said for the same thing, to control with the baby being exposed and also to give me medicine the entire time that I was going through labor. But I went in to be induced and I ended up having a C-section because she was very small also. I had her 3 weeks early. So they didn't know if it was the medication, if it was just me being small, that she was so small, but I had to have her early because she was way too small. And I just ended up having a C-section anyway.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share anything about like the whole process? What's happening now?
I'll go. So for me, I did have a discussion before I was pregnant about switching medication with my doctor. So I was on Biktarvy, and I'm still on Biktarvy. And my ID doctor, she said that, you know, she knew a lot of women who were on taking Biktarvy and were pregnant. The babies came out fine. So she gave me a choice. I could take Truvada and I think it's citrus. I think it was a combination, or I could just stay on Biktarvy. And I chose, since I was doing well on it, just to stay on it. And I did that. I had no problem. I was undetectable all through my pregnancy. And the reason why they gave me for my induction was because of my age. Really, they were saying I was approaching 35, and they were saying normally because of my age, they like to induce patients because of something about like a percentage, a 0.001 per whatever percentage of risk to the baby. And I didn't want the induction, because that shit seemed painful, and it was. Eventually I caved in to, because I was term. I was term when I had the induction, and I was able to hold out a week because of the pressure of, you know, my family and the doctors. Well, mostly my family, right? Because my mom had come from California to see the baby, and my dad wanted to meet the baby, and everyone was excited to see the baby. And I was like, well, fine, I'll go to the hospital and we'll get the induction. I ended up getting the induction, and what had happened was the baby, I was so much in pain that I ended up needing a freaking what do they call it?
Epidural.
Epidural, yeah. And once I got the epidural, the baby's heart rate dropped. And once the heart rate dropped, that's when I needed an emergency C-section. And that's how I gave birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can, speak on my experience a little bit. So where I got diagnosed and where I had my son at, both were like really rural parts of the South. And the place that I went into labor at, which my water broke at 33 and a half weeks, which was not HIV related, but it just happened. So I went to the emergency room of the city that I lived, and they were not prepared to deliver a child to a woman living with HIV. So I had to be taken by ambulance from there to the next biggest city, which was like a 45-minute ambulance ride. And that discussion then came then. At first, they were saying that they were going to let me hold the baby, so I would have been in the hospital for a little while longer, just until the baby, I guess we got closer to 40 weeks. But then the next news that came was that I would be induced. So they gave me the Pitocin, and that was that night. And I started having contractions the next morning. Gave birth to him vaginally. C-section never came up in my delivery plan or anything, and it hurt so bad, and I vowed right then that I would never ever do it again, and here I am. So but he's negative, and you know, the babies get the medicine. I just saw a girl who was positive said that she they're giving her baby a dose of medicine twice a day for 4 weeks. I felt like Zion took it a little longer than that, but that's it. And being that, you know, Heather, I'm learning so much from her. I'm planning on breastfeeding, so I'm anticipating that, you know, this new baby will be taking medicine a little longer, but they test them right then when they're born, and then you go back for a few more tests. And, you know, I went for one more extra one just to make sure, but I'm confident that we can have babies that are negative and well and thriving.
Yeah, we should mention that I think everybody's baby's negative, right? Just put your hand up. Yeah. All right, awesome. So we should mention that all these babies have been born negative, and that's great. I'm hearing though that there is a problem with them forcing the inductions, and the good thing that I'm hearing is there are more doctors that are allowing positive mothers to be a part of their birth plan, which I just heard Cece say she is planning on breastfeeding. And I know Heather has breastfed both of her children. So Heather, can you talk about a little bit about that and your choice and the process and what you did, how you came to breastfeed and you know, be confident in it?
Yeah, totally. So as I was saying before, when I became pregnant with Aurora, I listened to everything that the doctors told me. And I, you know, found out that I was going to be able to have a vaginal birth if I was undetectable at the time. And I assumed I would have to formula feed because, I mean, right on our medication bottles, it says, breast milk can transmit your infection to your baby, therefore do not breastfeed, in all caps. Like, it's very, very clear. And so I went to my ID doctor, actually for the first time. I, you know, had moved recently, so I had my very first appointment. So was brand new patient and pregnant. And then the doctor told me that she was moving somewhere else. And I was like, great, this impermanence came at a wonderful time, you know? But turns out the doctor that I ended up getting is awesome. And he asked me about my infant feeding decisions, and I immediately said, like, oh, formula, like, you know, I know, give the baby formula, because that was something that was reiterated over and over from other healthcare providers outside of the ID clinic. And then he sort of looked at me and like was feeling the waters and was like, well, like, what would you like to do? Like, what's your preference? And I was like, well, I've always dreamed of breastfeeding my children. I just think it's, you know, the natural process, and it's, you know, it's something I wanted to do, but I understand that's not possible. And he told me about the PROMIS studies in Africa. And basically in Africa, rural Africa, there's not access to clean water for formula. And so the death rate of infants is very high due to diarrhea from the unclean water. And therefore the women or the mothers there are recommended to exclusively breastfeed. And mother's on antivirals, and baby also is on antivirals during the breastfeeding period. And I think their standard for undetectable is something, I could be totally wrong, 200 copies per milliliter of blood. It's higher than here, than in the States. But you know, the results of the PROMIS studies were that the risk of transmission was less than 1% when mother's undetectable and baby's on antiretrovirals. So I just stewed upon that idea, did my own research. And, you know, the first thing I realized is when you Google HIV and breastfeeding, one thing's like exclusively breastfeed, it's less than 1%. And then absolutely do not do it. You know, there's so many things. And so I was just like, fine, I'll just use formula, you know? And I went back and forth so many times. I didn't end up like getting a breast pump because I was planning on formula feeding and actually started Aurora on formula in the hospital. And then I just sort of like, I guess I could describe it as like, I had a feeling, I just had like a gut feeling and I just kept thinking about it. And I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it was like 1:30 in the morning, the day after Aurora was born. And the nurse came in the room and I told her like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I want to breastfeed my baby. And can you call my infectious disease doctor so he can like, so we can all talk, you know? And she said, you know, I'll do this in the morning. So we went through the night and ended up, you know, my infectious disease doctor called in, spoke to the lactation consultant who spoke to the nurse. And it went from, I don't think that's a good idea, it's not CDC recommended, to the nurse coming in and saying like, I'm with you on this. Like, this is history, I'm with you on this. You should be able to breastfeed your child. And so that was amazing, but I was still very nervous. And I sort of had this feeling like, you know, as my body was making this milk and I started pumping because Aurora didn't latch at first, I sort of like, I was anxious. Like, I'm going to be real. I was anxious. I was stressed out. I thought like every time I fed her, oh my gosh, is this the time? I considered stopping. I had problems with milk supply because I didn't have her latch right away. And I didn't know anything about breastfeeding at all, nothing about pumping. I turned my pump up to the highest setting to try and get more milk. Not the thing to do. Ended up getting like an infection on my nipples and had to go get antibiotics for that. And it was so painful. And I was also flash heating the milk. I had done some research and my husband did some research as well. And in Africa, when mothers do not have access to antivirals, they express the breast milk and then flash heat it. So they bring it to a very high temperature and then allow it to just cool and feed it to their baby through a bottle. So I was pumping and flash heating and waiting for it to cool and preparing a bottle before Aurora could eat, you know? And I mean, I was just keeping up with her. So it was super stressful the first time around. But when I went to the doctor for my infection, I actually met Dr. Uphoff, who I've been working with in the U = U and breastfeeding campaign. She recommended that I try nursing. She's like, it's never too late, just give it a try. And one day Aurora latched and it was great. And I didn't stress anymore and I enjoyed it. And we nursed for 14 months and she's negative. So that's awesome. And with Zephyr, like I just went in and I was like, listen, this is what I'm going to do. And this is the information and you can't tell me otherwise. And of course they wrote in my report, like, you know, consulted with mother, told her about CDC recommendation. Mother chose to breastfeed anyways. But at that point, I was just like, yeah, I did. Like, absolutely. And other women should be able to as well. So, yeah, I'm really passionate about it. I'm really passionate about it. I believe that every mother should have the choice to breastfeed her baby if that's what she chooses to do. And she should be supported in doing that and be given the support to know how to do it safely. So, yes.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Cece, I'm wondering, have you told your doctor you're planning on breastfeeding, or are you just going to do it? Like, what has your process been?
Every time I talk about this, I want to cry because I've had the same doctor since I got to Philly back in like 2013. And the moment I found out I was pregnant, I knew that the side of my bottle, which I was upset about that because I'm of childbearing age and this lady did not consult with me when she put me on that darn medication. And that medication said that it was not recommended for, you know, people that wanted to be pregnant. So I was very upset with it. So, you know, that's neither here nor there. go talk to her because I know I need to change my medicine. So now I changed my medicine. I'm like, yes, I want to breastfeed because we're doing all this work, you know, with the Well Project. We have this expert consensus statement out, something that you can sign on, like sitting talking to all these experts. And I'm like, yo, I know it can happen. You know, I know other people in America, they doing it. So she tells me that no, that she's not going to support that. And no doctor in America would work with me if that was what I wanted to do. I'm like, yo, that can't be true. I know people in America that are doing this. Then they try like the fear tactic of, you know, well, even if that's what you want to do, then you need to not tell anybody. And if you do, then you know that there's a chance because the pediatrician we work with, she's known to call DHS or defects, whatever they call it where you are. They're known to call them on, you know, mothers that decide to breastfeed and who are living with HIV. And that's scary. Like, that's the last thing that I want to hear in my life is that somebody's going to be called on me because I decided I want to breastfeed. I've been taking care of this other child for 10 years. We're fine. We ain't got no issues. But this thing right here would be getting them folks into my business. All right. So I like freaked out. So I called the ladies at the Well Project. I called Heather. I'm like, yo, Heather, how did you get around that? Like, how are you able to breastfeed? And she explained to me what her experience was, that she was given an option. And my brain can't even fathom how that is the case. We live in the same country. How are things so different? Why is my placement in the world what is making, you know, me being able to breastfeed or not a thing? Like, I don't get it. I went through so much depression, postpartum depression with my first child. Oh, I wrote a blog about it. It's called Liquid Gold. I wanted to throw that baby because at some point I felt like he didn't need me anymore. I was able to birth him. Anybody could feed him this Similac, you know, this other stuff. He didn't need me. I felt so bad. Oh my God. And I feel bad for even feeling that bad. But I don't want to experience that this time around. And if there is a little glimpse of hope, you know, which there is a lot of glimpse of hope that I would be able to successfully breastfeed my child and that child remain negative, I'm willing to, you know, be a part of that research, a part of that, whatever. Like, yo, you can't keep making these decisions for us.
Thank you both for sharing that. That two totally different experiences. One, a doctor who supports and gave options. Two, and I had been thinking that the whole time because I've known some doctors who would want to call the Children and Family Services on a mother because they chose to do something that they didn't agree with. So Heather getting a choice and Cece, I'm assuming you're still in the South. You probably said that, but I don't remember.
I'm in Philly now. I'm up north.
Oh, you're in Philly, and they told you this. Okay, well, we can't blame everything go to South. We're in Philly, and they said that you're gonna call the Department of Family and Children's Services if that's your choice. I was thinking that because I know a lot of doctors that will do that, and that's horrible because.
I have to interject though, because not only was that doctor wrong, like there is literally a team of physicians here within the city that will support that decision, because that choice shouldn't be taken away. That first doctor wanted to take the choice totally away. I could still change my mind at this point. Like I could say I want to go and formula feed, but that should be my choice. And I should have someone to talk me through. I didn't even know the benefits of breastfeeding for a mom before this point. Like they totally skipped that conversation with me the first time because of my HIV status. Like, yo, I didn't know that, like, it wasn't until that U=U conference presentation that we did at USCHA in 2019. I didn't know, like, oh, wow, if I would have known this, then maybe I would have considered, maybe I would have pushed and asked more questions, But I have a new team and Heather helped me get linked with them. So I have a new infectious disease doctor. I have a caseworker, social worker that works with nothing but women living with HIV, an OBGYN that's willing to support it. And they'll be linking me with the pediatrician before the child is even born so that we can discuss all of this stuff. Like, yo, and it's right in the same city. So sometimes the providers don't be knowing what they talking about for real.
Absolutely. As Jenny said in the chat, there's a lot of stigma and discrimination still going on as it relates to mothers, women living with HIV being mothers. I've recently heard some stories about doctors still not wanting women to family plan, which is horrible. But my next question to you all is, if you were to first, if you were to tell a woman living with HIV who was interested in family planning, give them some advice, what would you tell them to do? What advice would you give? And I actually want everybody to answer this question. And then after that, just for follow-up, in case you want to answer it in the same sentence, what would you tell healthcare providers? Anybody can start.
I can start. Oh, Evelyn, I saw you come off mute. I'll go and then you can go. So what I would tell other mothers, I would first want to make sure that they have access to a support system, because you're going to need it. And I would make sure that they have access to medication so that they can adhere to medication, because that's a big thing too. I mean, I have had here in Virginia, I have an assistance program that pays for my medication. I have like a primary insurance, and then ADAP pays the rest of it. I'm not sure how it is like throughout the rest of the US, but my insurance has been canceled like 4 times, and I ran out of medication and wasn't able to get it. And that happened when I was pregnant. And I mean, I was on the phone with nurses and trying to find, my case manager. And I was told by one of the nurses that there are people who are in care and have 2 T cells or less, and that I could wait for my medication. Yeah, so pregnant, crying, very emotional. But yeah, like those were the words that came out of her mouth. So I would want to make sure that everything was in place and that they knew how to access their medication, because that's a whole puzzle piece too, trying to figure out how to keep that consistent and know that you can go to the pharmacy and get your medication every month. And, just make sure that they have an outlet, that they have self-care, something that they like to do that's going to make them feel good, because pregnancy is really hard, and pregnancy living with HIV is even harder than that. And I would make sure that they were collaborating on their care, that they were being asked questions by the doctors. What do they want? What's their vision? What do they want as a birth plan? And make sure that they are not being told what to do, especially because you can feel that way living with HIV, because you feel like, you have to do these things or XYZ, no, real talk, like you can make decisions, you can have a natural birth, and here's how you do it. And what I would tell care providers, I actually, hopefully, I'm working on putting together like a toolkit of like sort of like conversational prompts on how to have those conversations with care providers. And, I think the biggest thing just really is that just because a doctor is a doctor and they're in a place of authority, or, like that's how it's seemingly so at the appointment, it doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. But it does mean that they can put on their doctor hat and tell you what is what, you know what I mean? So just because they're a doctor, it doesn't mean that they know, and you always have the right to request someone else. So that's where the support system comes in, is, having someone support to help you to request someone else to care for you, and find providers that are going to support you in your own decisions, because they're out there. So.
Thanks, Heather.
I would say a lot of the same stuff that Heather said. I think most important, like you said, is to advocate for yourself. It's hard when, especially when you're newly diagnosed and you don't know anything about HIV or what's happening and you're pregnant. It can be scary and you just do whatever the doctors say. And I think it's important to advocate for yourself. Know that you are allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to disagree with the doctor. Get the help and support to take your medication, to adhere to it. Support groups. I think if I had more support, because nobody knew up until my daughter was a year old, until anybody that I was positive. So I dealt with all of that by myself, the doctor's appointments, giving her medicine, taking her to get tested. So support is a big one. And as far as healthcare providers, they need to include us on those decisions. I was told right away, you cannot breastfeed. It can transmit to the baby, and that was it. And it was very heartbreaking for me. And I didn't get a choice in that matter because I thought that's how it sounded. It is final. You cannot breastfeed. Your baby will get sick. And that was it. With all the other things and not breastfeeding, there was this much of a chance. So I did what the doctor said. And it shouldn't be like that. We need to be included in that conversation. You equals you. I didn't even know about you equals you when I was diagnosed in 2015. So it was a lot of lack of information. And the providers need to be on top of that and be responsible for sharing that information with us.
Thanks, Evelyn. Who's next?
I'll go. I agree with everything that was said by the previous panelists. I would just also add that when you're getting ready to go have birth, I know for personal experience, really look into the policies of the hospital. Because what I personally encountered was like, okay, after I had the baby, and I initially wanted to breastfeed. I wanted to, and I encountered like some red tape, where okay, I got support from the OB side of things, and it gave me a lactation consultant and all that. And then when I got to NICU, they're like, oh no, you can't breastfeed. Our policy is that you can't breastfeed, but we can give them mother's milk, and then the NICU people were like, no, we have to give your baby formula. So that really disappointed me. And I was really sad because my baby was in there for like a couple of days. He was in there for like a week. So I would really tell people to really look into the hospital's policies and, make sure it's like, they'll support your decision, whatever it is. And as far as healthcare providers go, I agree with the previous panelists. Like, please include me. I was fortunate that I had an ID doctor and doctors in the community that included me. My resistance came when I encountered it at the hospital. So, yeah.
Yes, I think support is like among, the most common answer here. And so many times that support can be found in so many different outlets, because usually like we're the ones sharing information amongst each other, like mothers who have been through it, women that are living with. So I wouldn't have known that, it was a thing if I hadn't encountered other people who had breastfed or moms that had been pregnant and living with HIV. So I think a lot of times that's where it starts. And I've found so much strength. I'll big up the Well Project all the time because, that's where the stories, the blogging, the storytelling, the community that is there has been so inspirational. And to see that everybody's story, like we might share one thing in common, but everybody's story is definitely not the same. So building the support there, which can lead you to, even bigger supports within your natural community or whatever. I would tell them, I found myself when I was giving Zion the medicine that I was beating myself up again, during that time. So try to, just offer yourself a little bit of grace. Like you need it all. As mothers, we're always going to need it, but you should be the first one to offer that to yourself. It's okay. And, keep your head up. positive attitude. Cry when you need to cry though, because I'm big on that. I surely will. And these providers, I definitely, I always tell them, please leave your biases and your stigma and all of that at home, because the office is not the place for that. Because I definitely will, you know, voice my opinion and let you know that this ain't right. Like, you can live your life how you want to live your life, but this one here is mine, and I should be able to do with it, you know, what I want to within reason.
Thank you all for that. Two major things I heard: support, 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 support. I 100% agree. If you can have some support, even if it's one person, because I was similar to Evelyn when I did not, when I got pregnant, nobody knew about my diagnosis except for one person. And that one person supported me a lot, and I needed it, because being pregnant is one thing, having a baby is another, being HIV positive is another. Those three things together is a lot of work. Because you got to get yourself medicine, you got to get a baby medicine, you got to take yourself to the doctor, you got to make sure the baby goes to see the doctor, I mean, in your body. So, and now I am so happy that we can breastfeed. We have the choice. So I'm glad to hear your stories, even the ones about a hospital saying, oh no, that's not our policy. I can guarantee you that's not written in any of their rules. And next time, and if a hospital tells you that, tell them to show you that policy and to transfer you to a hospital that will support you. As I've worked in hospitals before and advocated for people and women living with HIV, I've had to tell providers frequently, the woman living with HIV is your patient and you should listen to her. You're not going to be able to help her unless you listen to her. In this case, providers should be listening to you if you're watching and you are family planning or you are currently pregnant and thinking about breastfeeding or any of these things that you want to do. Your provider should be listening to you. I appreciate all of you guys telling me, I mean, you know, speaking to those different and difficult parts of your journey. My last question to you before we get to transition is, outside of healthcare, did you guys, because you're so, you know, most of you are open about your status, I'm not sure if all, did you face any kind of stigma or discrimination from people outside of the healthcare field during your pregnancy or after you gave birth? And if so, how did you handle it?
Well, I'm very open with my status. I'm just jumping there. And I shared the other day that I received a DM the other day that the lady was like, I see you're living with HIV and you're pregnant. How do you feel about that? Like, I'm fine. How you feel? Like, what is that supposed to mean? But I feel like there is so much stigma that goes, you know, that's happening. And sometimes on top of the internal stigma that any of us could be feeling at any given time, that external stigma that comes from people that don't even mean it. Like, talking to her a little bit more, come to find out this lady's having some fertility issues. And for some reason, she mixed HIV with fertility issues. And I'm like, no, ma'am, that's not my plight. Like, I had regular sex to have this pregnancy. Like, it's nothing special that I had to do. But yeah, a lot of times I think that people just can't even conceive that it can happen. I think as soon as you hear HIV, you're going straight to an AIDS diagnosis and you're sick and you're about to die. And so the fact that you're able to bring forth life that's negative, I don't think that people can even, you know, conceive that in their mind. But, you know, us living our lives out loud, you just continue to dispel that myth so often. Like, no, HIV, so many days, HIV is not the first thing I get up and think about. At all.
I can go and share. So I feel as though throughout all of my prenatal care, my HIV diagnosis was sort of like a hush-hush thing. Like anytime I saw a new care provider, because the practice I go to, they alternate, you know, I'd come in the room, they'd say, oh, you're however many weeks and what medications are you on? And then it like got to the Biktarvy and then they're like, oh, and you know, I see you have HIV. I'm like, yeah, I'm living with HIV. We can talk about it, you know, it's okay. But I mean, they would truly like whisper it. And then when I decided to breastfeed, there was a lot of concern from family, friends, family members, because there's just not a lot of information out there other than breast milk can transmit the virus to your baby. So that was hard. I mean, because I was already having a hard time producing milk and pumping and flash heating and getting my baby fed, and postpartum depression and postpartum OCD. And just, it was a lot of stuff all at one time. And so to have the comments or the questions like, well, you know, aren't you a little bit worried? What if you transmit? Like, I just didn't need that. You know what I mean? And even if it's coming from a place of like love and care, which like, I'm sure somewhere it is, the way you ask me those questions means a lot, because that determines how I'm going to receive them. And if someone's in a vulnerable state and you know, come at them in a way that makes you question your motherhood, you know, that stabs a little bit, you know? And so I just found it was easier to just say like, oh, okay, thanks, you know, thanks for your opinion. And then later on, now we're having the conversations like, oh, that probably wasn't the best thing to say, was it? I'm like, no, but you know, you learned, and speak to someone else a little differently in that situation. So yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me.
Thanks.
I had similar experience, more so with doctors. Luckily with friends and family, I had no issues with. I did have like those feelings with some of the doctors. I remember the day I left the hospital with my daughter, the doctor pulled me aside to ask me if I had any questions about the medicine. And I asked one question and she was, you see, that's why. Who told you you could leave today? Who said you were okay to leave? You asked me if I had a question, and I asked one little question, and it's kind of like she's like I wasn't taking it seriously. And I had the same experience with the same doctor later, getting my daughter tested a few months later. She was having issue taking her blood. And after like what felt like 5 minutes of my daughter screaming and her with the needle, I said, stop, I'll come back and do this. Oh, well, you need to do this. This is important. The same thing, like I'm not taking it seriously. And I felt like it was because I have HIV, then you must assume like I don't care. I don't find this serious. It is my daughter. Of course I take it seriously. And that was more so with the doctors. I even had a nurse at a GYN ask me, do you have any STDs? And I said, I have HIV. And she looked and she's like, right now? And I said, yeah. Like, what do you mean right now? But she said, well, you look great. So, well, thank you. Like, what am I supposed to look like? You know, so it's more so it's like ignorant kind of stuff like that with providers that you would think would know better. Luckily, not with people, friends, and family. But.
That's good. Thank you.
I think from my perspective, my friends and family have been, for the most part, supportive, and especially throughout the pregnancy. I've had, thank God, really no issues from that point in perspective. With strangers, mostly, it's been, I've had one comment was you're positive and you're pregnant. I said, yeah. You know, because I'm open with my status. Like, yeah, I'm positive and I'm pregnant and I'm fine. Look at me, fat and happy, you know. I had one a case manager, because I was at the time thinking about breastfeeding, and she contemplated that, you know, the state of Nevada could prosecute me if I knowingly gave HIV to my baby while I was breastfeeding. I don't know how true that is, but that was one I really took, like really spooked me. Other than that was it.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes people will give you those stigmas and put those stigmas on you just so you don't do something, which is unfortunate, which is why we're doing this, to get the information out, because we want people to know that they have choices. We've come so far with learning how to control HIV that women definitely have a choice for family planning. We have a quick question I want to get to. It says, how are your husbands and partners' level of comfort during the pregnancy and postpartum? You all are my heroes for fighting the stigma. Anybody want to tackle that?
I can. My now husband was very supportive. Like, he went with me to every visit, and he was there at the birth and everything. So he's at work now, but yeah, he was great. He's a great partner to have. And then my other support like was his mom. His mom is watching our son right now. And yeah, I couldn't ask for a better partner.
My first child, I was married to his father. He's an idiot now and was an idiot then. But he he was okay. Like, I think that both of my kids' fathers, they trust me to make the best decision, for the baby. I know that they know that the baby will be all right, because I said that the baby will be all right. They know that I'm in care and doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, I'm good. They're good.
Yeah, my husband's been amazing and supportive the whole time. Especially, I had a C-section, so I needed a lot of help afterwards just to do basic things. So he was there from the very beginning, thankfully.
My husband was also super supportive through my diagnosis and pregnancy and everything. And I mean, throughout our relationship, we definitely had our ups and downs and learning one another and everything. But actually, the day I got the day that I got diagnosed with HIV, he went out and got a ring and he proposed to me that night. And that was like, okay, I like him, I'm going to keep him around. So yeah, through pregnancy, it was great. One of the hardest things for us, I think, is my own mental health. Like, even when I'm not pregnant, I suffer from pretty severe anxiety and depression and have some OCD tendencies as well. And I've had trouble going through, finding a good medication for myself. And then becoming pregnant, my doctor recommended that I went off of them. So that was a roller coaster for both of us, because I didn't understand myself. And so how is he going to understand me at that time? So he kind of had to know when to pull away and sort of give me some time, and when to intervene and give me that support. And that was a lot of ups and downs for both of us. But he stuck through it with me, and he's still here. So he's pretty cool.
That is amazing. Thank you, ladies, so much for sharing all of this important information. Look at us. We are out here with husbands. I mean, I don't have one, but I'm hoping. We out here with husbands and partners who are supportive. We out here family planning, having babies, breastfeeding, and advocating for ourselves. We are out here doing it. And we hope that this information eases the process for somebody else. We hope that there's a woman living with HIV who's thinking about having a baby, and she's like, they did it, I can do it. Because you should be able to do and have whatever it is you want in this life, even though you're living with HIV. Living with HIV, as Cece said, sometimes most times that's not even the biggest problem when we are, taking care of ourselves and doing what we need to do. That's not the biggest problem in this world. But we are out here doing it. And I am so happy for all of you thank you for sharing. Thank you for giving those resources. If someone needs to get more information, or if somebody is looking for support because maybe their healthcare provider or their hospital is giving them some jazz, you guys can reach out to Cece is at the Well Project. Heather is also a Well Project. I'm not sure if you work for the Well Project or I know you blog for them, but who you work for, Heather?
So I blog for the Well Project, and then I'm the communication specialist for ICWNA. So
thank you. I am getting old. My memory is not as.
Oh, me too, girl. I'm doing great.
And then you can always reach out to any of us at Positive Women's Network. We all are on social media. Our inboxes are all open. If anybody needs help, if anybody has questions, you have a support. You have amazing support, because all of us are amazing, I would say. So please reach out. Please let us know, because we want you to do what you want to do. We want you to have a choice. We want you to have a family if that's what you want to have. HIV doesn't stop any of that. Thank you, ladies. And Jenny, how do we transition to, I know we're transitioning to our next panel.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, let's go ahead and I'm gonna remove the spotlights here. Folks who are with us, don't leave yet, because we've got another amazing panel about to start. Let me just play with my technology here to bring in our next panel. Oh no, I've got Heather here all by herself. Okay, wait, hold on. Hang on. Wait. Okay, there we go. Okay, here we go. Bring in my folks. Hey, Grissel. There's Octavia. Here we go. And I guess I have to put myself out there too. There we go. Hi. Welcome. So good to see you all. It's been a long time since seen it. I know all of you in real life, but it's been like a million years since I've seen you in person. But it's really great to see you all here right now. So we have our panel now who are all adoptive moms, and super excited to talk about that, because we love families of all different, different ways that they come together and form and exist. And so we had a wonderful panel talking about pregnancy and breastfeeding, and now we've got a panel talking about other ways that we can form families. So welcome, and thank you all so much for being here. I'm gonna ask each of you to just briefly introduce yourselves. So yeah, whoever wants to go first.
I'll go since I'm unmuted already. Hi, my name is Grissel. I live in Los Angeles, and I have a little one who's about to turn 2 in 3 weeks, who came to my family through foster care and adoption, and has definitely changed my life for the better and for the more tired.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Monique Howell here in Summerville, South Carolina. I have 5 teenagers. I adopted 2 girls, teenage girls. So I am busy, enjoying being a mother.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Octavia, pronouns she and her. I have a adoptive son, and I have a foster son who is also 7. So yeah, I have my hands full.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you all so much for being with us. So just to get started, you all mentioned, you're like, Grissel has a little bitty one, Monique's got teenagers, Octavia, yours are kind of in between. How old is Ethan now?
Ethan will be 8 August the 7th.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Now, I know, right? He's grown up in front of pretty much everybody's eyes.
Wow. So so we've got sort of the whole spectrum of ages going on here. So I guess just to sort of start the conversation, what made you all decide to foster or adopt?
As far as myself, I actually grew up, growing up, my mother and my father, they actually did fostering and adopting. So I always saw kids. I never had my mother and my father to myself. So when I got older, I decided to follow their footsteps. And I was like, you know what? I want to do the same thing, because I saw how other children needed my parents' love and needed our family's love, that I want to do the same thing.
That's beautiful, because you also have you had kids first and then you all adopted.
Yes.
So you got a full house.
Yeah, and I know for me, it's something that I always knew that this is how I wanted to create a family, even since I was young. I was actually with some like college friends, and we were looking through some like things that we did, like a get to know each other activity. And I found like the interview they did with me. And even when I was like 19 years old, I knew kind of that this is how I wanted to make a family. And I just always thought about it like, you know, there's a lot of kids out there who, kind of like would benefit from me offering a family and a home. And I never really had that like desire to be pregnant or birth a child, although I think that experience is beautiful in its own. And I, you know, like, and live in amazement of folks who are able to do that. But I knew that wasn't how I wanted to do it. And so, yeah, I'm glad that I was able to follow through even on this idea of family that I had since I was young.
For me, as a woman of trans experience, I never thought it would be possible. And when I relocated to New York and I had the opportunity to become a foster parent, I was like, okay, this is one way of getting my foot in the door of doing it. And when I fostered and the opportunity came about to be an adoptive parent, I really was stuck about the situation. And that's how I ended up with Ethan. I was already fostering, and he came to me at 6 months because the woman that initially had him knew that he had some developmental delays and she was older and she did not want anything to happen to her, and then that would be left to her children. So she made the conscious decision to let him go to a pre-adoptive home, which that was me at the time. And he's been with me ever since. And it has been the best decision I have ever made. I wouldn't change it for the world. And with my foster son now, he's actually 2 days younger than Ethan. So his birthday is August the 9th. So I have two Leos that are 2 days apart. So yeah, so if you know, they have their moments. But again, I'm hoping with him to be able to adopt him as well. It's just trying to, you know, get things in accordance with, you know, his mom and with his birth father, to see, you know, what's going to eventually happen. But our goal now has been changed from return to parent to adoptive. So we're just now waiting to see what happens.
Thanks so much. And I feel, and I'm speaking also personally as someone who's considering fostering in the future. I feel like the process is sort of opaque in a lot of ways when you're even thinking about getting started. Like I don't even know where, like, so when you decide to foster or adopt, do you express from the beginning that you're trying to adopt, or does it start as a foster situation and then has the opportunity, or anything you can sort of shed light on, I think would be super helpful for folks like me.
When I went through the adoption, when I went through taking my classes, because you have to have what they call MAP training here in New York. When I went through the MAPS training, it was 30 hours. They ask you, you know, are you willing to foster? What age are you willing to foster? Are you willing to adopt, you know, to become a pre-adoptive home? So they ask you those things in the beginning. And my goal was when I started, like, oh, wait, I got the option to adopt. I'm like, okay, that's great. So my option was always, my home was always pre-adoptive, even though I was just getting foster children at the time. And with fostering, you never know how, the pendulum will swing. Because sometimes, parents, get themselves together, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes, they see their child thriving in the home of foster parents. And it's not that they, don't love their children, but they see that they can't provide that level of care and stability for their children. And some parents do decide, to allow their children to be adopted by those, said foster parents. And I've seen that happen with some friends of mine. But with me going through the whole fostering process, I think I've had now 9 children come through my home, and it's not easy. When you love a child and you're constantly giving a child care 24/7, to the child going back home. Because with every child, I cried the day that they left. Because for me, that, everything that you have, put into them, the wisdom that you have instilled in them, the safety you have provided for them, the nurturing that you have given them, the guidance that you bestowed upon them, all of those things, it takes out of you. Because these are living human, beings, even though they are children, to see them flourish and grow in front of you, like, yeah, it takes a lot out of you when they leave. So for some people, fostering is not for them, because they'll, once you go through it and you see that child leave, we are human, so we develop that emotional attachment. And what has gotten me through that is the fact that I have had Ethan that have helped me with that. And I know that I have to keep going because, that is my son. And, what got me into fostering is because I always looked at it from the standpoint that I have a brother and a sister. And I've always said that if they ever, got into anything or they needed some assistance, I hope that they would get a foster parent like myself that, understands that people make mistakes. And that we all deserve a second chance. So that's what really led me to fostering.
Yeah, and I think the process is different. I think it varies even by county. And so, yeah, my process, I think, is similar to Octavia. So in LA County, they actually, like, now they're no longer called like foster parents. Now everybody's like a resource family. And so essentially you go through the same training, have the same requirements one way or another. And again, that's how, at least if you want to adopt through the system, then essentially you start off the same way. And so you sign up to be a resource family, and at first you might get foster placements, and then it just kind of depends on that child's unique situation, whether they're able to be adopted or not. And so, yeah, I think I definitely got into this, I don't know, going back and forth. Like, I knew what I was getting myself into, but at the same time, like Octavia was sharing, like, I think just like me thinking through it now, like if I hadn't been able to adopt so quickly and things were uncertain, I think by now I would just be completely heartbroken if I had to be separated from Max. And so yeah, I mean, it's something I want to go through again, hopefully in another year or two. But I do think about it. I'm like, we just got so lucky. We were able to have all of our adoption process go by very quickly, even through COVID when everything shut down. Like, it still went by really fast. Like, we were able to adopt within a year and a half. And so, which is really quick. And so, yeah, like I'm just thinking through that. Like, I don't know kind of what it would be like if it had been different, but I'm still willing to put myself out there and do it again, knowing that it might not be the same kind of process as we had this time around.
Thanks. How about you, Monique? Did you know that you were going to end up adopting your daughters when you brought them home? Or?
I actually went straight to adoption. So I never did the foster care. Like I said, I grew up with my parents seeing the foster children. But I was, like how Octavia said, I'm the type of person, I would have got all emotional. I would love, but by all means, I just started the process like 2 weeks ago, doing the fostering. If should kids need to come to my home, my home is always welcome. But I have that, I'll start crying in a minute. So I went straight adoption. I'm here in South Carolina. It is still foster. They still call it foster care here. So the children, if you're fostering, the children goes to any home around here. I always say we need a lot of more foster parenting, and we need a lot of more people to do adoption, because I was actually in a meeting 2 weeks ago of a child that needed a foster home, and the stories that you hear is very heartbroken. And these children need people, women like us, to adopt them and to bring them into our home and show them the love that they truly need. So I went straight to adoption. My girls are from a different state. So I'm in South Carolina. I was a part of adoption agency here in South Carolina, but that agency do the adoptions outside of South Carolina, if that makes sense. I could not adopt anybody in South Carolina. It's kind of backwards. So I had to adopt children outside of South Carolina. So I flew to Alabama, met my girls, and for like 4 days, and then they flew my daughters to South Carolina to get to know me and my boys for like 4 days. And then that's when I decided if I wanted to take on that responsibility. Of course, they do the background check, everything else. So I went straight to adoption. My girl's been with me. One's been with me, I think 4 years, and the other one's 3 years now. So I did straight, and it was a year and a half, like Grissel said. I probably said your name wrong, but it was faster than I expected. I thought, but there are, I guess, depending on which agency you go through, every place, every state, every county is different. While some can get their child a year and a half, some can be waiting 5 years. It really all depends on who you go through and your research. It's all about researching and getting the information that you truly need. What works for us, it can be something completely different for the next person.
And you're right, like my process, it took me almost 4 years to adopt.
Wow.
And the reason why it took so long was because Ethan's biological mother, she has intellectual challenges. So what the state does is, a parent can terminate their parental rights, go through your TPR process. But when you have someone that has intellectual problems in New York State, they rather go through all the battery of tests and everything so that the state can rule the person, not capable of taking care of their child versus them surrendering their rights. Because later they can come back and say, I was forced to do this and no one advocated for me. So that's why my process with Ethan took so long. Now with Peyton, it's a little bit different because with his mother, even though she's having challenges, I think what's going to eventually happen with her is that her lawyer is going to have a conversation with her instead of having the state terminate her rights to go to open adoption, meaning that her and I would have to sit down and come to terms on what does visitation look like, because there's 2 different adoptions you can do. You can do open or you can do closed. With Ethan, it was closed, meaning that I don't have to do anything with his biological mother, but I choose to do so. Now with Peyton, if it goes to open, that means that we would have to, agree upon hey, I want him to come with me, the biological mother can say, I want him to come with me for 2 weeks every summer, or I want him on Christmas, or I want him every other Thanksgiving. And we have to negotiate, what does that look like? So when, individuals are going through adoptions, like Monique said, you do have to do your research, because you do have to know, hey, is this going to be an adoption where I'm going to have to be involved with the parents, still be in contact with them, sending them letters, or is this going to be where, hey, I don't have any connections with them, the child is legally mine, everything is on documentation, it says that I'm the mother, which that's what I have for Ethan. When we did the adoption, like on his birth certificate, like everything, it has my name, for mother. And he had never had a social security number before, so he got that, with the adoption and going through with me. So again, it like the other ladies on the line are saying, it does depend on where you're at. It depends on, again, your what region you're in. Because for me, in Georgia, if I still would have been there, I couldn't adopt. I can foster, but I can't adopt because I'm a person of trans experience. So I can't adopt. So again, it's just all about where you are, and you have to like know those things going into stuff.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's actually a really awful example of the discrimination that still exists. And it made me think of, I'm in California now, but I was in Miami for 4 years up until September. And I remember a case it was in the Keys, and there was a gay couple who had been fostering a couple of kids they'd had them for years, and they were thriving, and they were really happy, and they, the kids were eligible to be adopted, and they wanted to adopt them, and they were, the state was not allowing them to adopt, even though they had been excellent parents for 5 or 6 years, and the kids were doing really well and were very attached. And I think in the end they were able to, but it was a whole court case, and it was I don't remember exactly.
But didn't they move to like Washington or something? Because one of the parents was a nurse or something, wasn't he?
I don't remember what the professions were, and there might be more than one case. Unfortunately, There probably is, but yeah, I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous, especially when you have kids who really need that safe home and that support that you would be,
Another thing is that it can be heartbroken when you're in the process of adopting or fostering. You have to think about the families that have more than one sibling. Some state, I know here in South Carolina, they sometimes have to separate those siblings because that adopted parent or that foster parent cannot take on that load. Someone may have 5 children, but you can't take all 5 of those children. So you have to think about all of that when you're deciding to adopt and foster, that it's possible that the siblings are somewhere else, so that's another thing you have to be very mindful of.
Yeah, and I was thinking it's interesting because, for example, Grissel, I know you're that Max came to you as a baby, so you're the only mom he's ever known. How old was Ethan? Octavia?
He was 6 months, so he doesn't even remember. Yeah, so he doesn't even remember.
Completely grown up with you. But Monique, I know your girls were already older, so I'm just kind of wondering, the differences when you bring children who are old enough to to have had a different family.
With my girls, being that they're teenagers, they remember their families, but one of my daughters, she was adopted before, so she was adopted at birth. And that adopted parent, messed up, and she ended up back in the system. And now I have her. So her memories is she doesn't even know her biological mother. And then the memories of her adopted mom previously is very bad. So the being that they're older and they remember, it's very touching because they think about what they've been through. So you have to be emotional. You have to be very mentally prepared for older children because they've been there, and they, when they come into these homes, you gotta redirect, and you gotta, listen. You have to have patience because these children truly had been through a lot of trauma. So, and the other daughter, she remembers her family. So it is very touching. That's why it's very hard with teenagers. A lot of people, they try to bypass teenagers because teenagers, they know who their families are because it's their families that, did something that caused them to be in the system.
Yeah.
And also too, it depends on I know for me, I'm a therapeutic home. So that means I had to take extra training. And touching on Monique thing with teens, sometimes when you get teens, they do come with what we learn to call it their emotional suitcase, meaning that they have a lot of stuff that they have packed away, and that they're carrying with them. And for some people, it is very hard. So not all foster parents, because they ask you like, what age are you willing to take? And not everyone is willing to take teenagers. And when I initially became a foster parent, that's the age that I wanted because I knew they were the hardest to place and I knew they were the last ones to be adopted. So I initially wanted older kids because I still wanted to travel, I still wanted to do stuff, and I was totally against getting a baby. And what changed my, you know, reference of wanting to have a baby was when my first placement was a 10 day old baby named Messiah. And when he came to me, that like changed everything, my whole perspective of wanting an infant because I was like, I don't want to be getting up out my sleep. I don't want to be changing no dirty diapers. I'm not going to be trying to get no bottles in the middle of the night. I'm like, that's not for me, baby. I want to be the mama, but I want mine to be walking and talking and can tell me what's going on. So that was my mindset. But then like when the baby came and like you see this child and like now you're responsible for like their care, their well-being, like everything changes. And for me, it was a change. And it was like, it's no longer about me anymore. It's about this little being. It's about making sure that I can provide them, you know, the safety, you know, security that they, you know, require. And like, it changed because I'm not gonna lie, I was a shopaholic before I had Ethan. Everything had to be about me. Shopping, shopping, shopping. But like now I don't do that anymore. It's like all of my efforts now go on, okay, I gotta provide for him later on in life. So what am I doing to prepare for him? Like, do I have enough life insurance? Like, am I getting stocks and bonds for him? Like, am I putting money away in savings for him? Like I never was the person that did that beforehand. And like now that I do have him, it's like I'm more conscious of like wanting to have my own home. You know, wanting to have something that I can give to him. Um, and so it really has changed my whole perspective. Um, because I don't know where I would be if I you know was not a mom right now. I don't know where I would be. I know I wouldn't be the Octavia, you know, that everyone sees now. Because again, having children, it definitely changed your perspective. Because like I used to be the type that like someone say something and get out of the pocket, but you can't do that when you got kids because you got to think about like who's gonna take care of your kids if you know going off and popping off and like now I'm just like okay, that's how you feel. I can't change how you feel. I don't apologize for your feelings, but this is where we agree to disagree, and now I'm moving on. But the old Octavia, no, it wasn't like that. And so I'm so glad that, you know, I have them and it has really changed my perspective and really, you know, made me the person that I am now.
That's awesome. And yeah, this is like, it's very personal to me too, because some of my best friends here were in the foster care system as teenagers, like you're all saying. And so I feel like I also have that perspective of like, these are some of the most amazing people I know. And for them, you know, foster care was for for a few months or a couple of years, like, you know, while their families were having trouble. And, you know, it was like a safe place to land, a safe harbor. Like, you know, kids need that security. And I absolutely hear about the, you know, teenagers being harder to place. And I'm actually kind of interested in it myself as a former high school teacher. You know, I'm used to teenagers. I know what a pain in the ass they can be. I also know how to deal with them. So yeah, what would you all say is the most challenging part of fostering or adopting or parenting in general?
I'll go. The most challenging part for me is not being able to control what goes on when you and your child exits your door. You know, you teach them the best you can. Like me, you know, Ethan grew up going to conferences. You know, so like he has a little shirt. This is what an HIV activist looks like. You know, I had him immersed in that. Um, so like if someone was to tell him, oh, you know, I have HIV or I know someone that HIV, I don't want it to be like something that is foreign to him or, you know, even the fact of, you know, talking about trans issues. Like, I don't want that to be foreign to him. But again, what, you know, scares me the most is that I am raising, you know, a little brown and black boy in America. And like just having to have, you know, those conversations of like what it's going to be like for your interactions with law enforcement and like, don't, do certain things because whereas another child may be seen as, oh my God, he's just, being a little deviant or defiant, you will be seen as unruly, or someone that, is not willing of not deserving of a second chance. And that's unfortunate that for many of us that are people of color, particularly brown and black, those are the conversations that we have to have with our children. So like that's one of the things that scares me the most about being a parent. And that's one of the things I'm definitely not looking forward to, but I know I'm going to have to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just related to that, one of the things that was interesting in my experience. So I am Latina, and my family kind of ranges in color tone. But there's a lot of anti-Blackness and colorism in the Latino community as well. And so my baby is very brown, very melanated. And so that's interesting as well, just because, right, like even though I'm a cis woman, it's still kind of like very obvious that I did not birth this child. And then with my family kind of like adjusting to that, like there was still a lot of just kind of like colorism type of comments that were coming up in the beginning. And so I know I had a lot of just kind of was like very defensive in the beginning, just kind of like I'm ready to fight. And so yeah, just navigating that and even thinking through like, yeah, what is that gonna be like? What are those conversations I'm gonna have with him? Right, kind of like my plan is to be very open about the fact that he's adopted, even though again, as like a cis woman, right, I could have technically birthed him, right, like when it's obvious that I didn't birth him. But also like, I just want to, like, I grew up kind of around my own HIV status with my mom being very honest about that. And so I want to be able to do that with Max as well, even around adoption. That kind of whole thing was taboo. Even like in the beginning, my mom was like, well, you don't need to tell anybody that he's adopted. You could just say you had him. And I was like, but why? Like, or just things like that, because adoption, like in Black and brown communities, I think adoption is common. It happens a lot. It just doesn't always happen in the way that I went about it, right? Kind of like I went through a family foster agency and kind of like did it through that. Versus a lot of times kids come into our families through our extended families or friends or neighbors or whatever it is, even though there's a misconception that only white folks adopt. That's not true. But like that was kind of, this experience was completely new and completely different for my family, to think through like, oh, you're adopting. Wait, what does that mean? Wait, so you're not going to birth someone? Wait, but can you? And all of the questions about like, does this have to do with HIV? Right. And so just it's such a loaded thing to do as a cis person, right? Because it's like, I feel like if it was, right, I think for like a person of trans experience, it's kind of like, oh, well, obviously you can't have kids, right? But like, it's like, well, but that's not the only reason. Like I have always known that this is how I wanted to create a family. Like that shouldn't be, right, kind of like that shouldn't be my only option to make a family. And so just a lot of loaded things that come with this decision of like adopting and adopting a child who might not look like you.
For me, of course, I have 3 biological boys. So just that conversation alone is, like Octavia said, that I'm having those conversations now with my 3 Black boys, how the street life and what can happen to my 3 Black boys. Not only that, as a mother who is living with HIV, we already got that to deal with. So trying to be a mother, I'm like, okay, I got to be strong for these boys. Now I have a Caucasian daughter and I also have a biracial daughter. So yes, the eyes be turning when I'm in the store. They be looking at me like, and so like, especially with my Caucasian daughter, we always get, if we're in line, they always think that she doesn't belong to our family. And I'll give them that eye, like, yes, she's with me, because they think that she's with someone else, not with me, because they see all of us and okay, the mixed girl they're looking at us like, okay, she's probably with them, but the Caucasian one is not. I'm like, no, it's also it's many conversations that happens in my household, because I also have to teach them that we love no matter what color you are. If you treat us with respect, we're gonna treat you with respect. I also get like, oh, even though I had 3 of my own, I found out when I was pregnant. I found out my HIV status when I was pregnant. Now, some people even think I adopted because they feel like, oh, you can't have no more children. Maybe that's why Monique is adopting now, because, she found out her HIV status with her last son. So it makes sense. Maybe she can't have no more children. I'm like, no, because I don't, plan on having any more kids, but if it's God's will for my life, then hey, science is amazing. So it's a lot of conversations in my household because there's different race in my house. So we don't see color in this house. However, far as, my boys, I do stand up for them and tell them, hey, this is what can happen in the real world. And being that mother, just trying to be the mother for the boys and for the girls, sometimes it can be very challenging because I'm having those different conversations with all of them. So it can be kind of frustrating for me as well. Like, as a mother, am I saying the right things to my children? And my daughter, who's Caucasian, I teach her, like, what if when she get in the real world, how is she gonna, feel, trying to find her own family, and what is going on in her mind that she's raised by, a Black family, so many things go on in my mind. But I always say that we as adopted parents and foster parents, we have so many things in our mind. We're worried about what our children think. And then because I have teenagers, they turn right back around and be like, you know what, Mom, you're doing an amazing job. Here we are worried about if we're doing the right thing for our children, but then they do the littlest thing and remind us that, hey, our children appreciate us. And I think that's what matters, is that they do appreciate us, even when we think that we're not saying the right words to our children, because it's challenging being a foster parent and being an adopted parent, because we're trying to show love to these children, that we did not give birth to. So we're trying to make sure we're doing every step correct, but they remind us with something small they may do during the day that, hey, Mom, you're doing amazing. So that's my piece.
That's beautiful. And actually, I have to say, you're kind of lucky for that from teenagers, because teenagers are not always like beacons of gratitude to their parents. I know I was not. And I know a lot of the kids that I taught were not either. So I'm really glad that they're showing you that kind of appreciation.
I'm like Medea in this house. I'm like, don't play. I will show y'all the other side of me. I do not play with these kids in here.
And Monique, how were your sons? Like they were totally cool with the girls coming, or was there any kind of friction around that? How did that
When
work?
I first told them I was adopting, they're like, okay, cool, Mom, because we always had kids in and out my home anyway, because you guys know my boys are athletes. So I was that teen mom that had anybody. I didn't care. As long as those kids, I'd rather see a child in my home, than out on the streets. I've always been that type of person. So when I said I was going to adopt and they were going to be teenage girls, my boys was like, man, for real? Oh, Mom, you always doing something. But when the girls came, they bonded with the girls. My girls are, they're behind in education. They take special classes. They're in special programs. So they're 17, but their mindset is more of a younger level. So the boys are very patient with the girls. We help them. We're trying to, speed them up, and it's very challenging, but the boys have been understanding about that part. And the boys are truly very helpful with the girls. Sometimes it gets frustrating in here because we have to have patience with the girls, but so far, so good.
That's great. That's really great. And then I'm wondering specifically around, because I keep hearing coming up, especially with like friends and family around the HIV status. Oh, is that why you're adopting? I'm wondering, did any of you encounter any kind of discrimination or stigma around the HIV in the legal process, or even with like social workers, anything like that? Or did you even have to talk about the fact that you were living with HIV as part of the process in any way?
So they do this like intensive interview, right? They're really trying to vet kind of like who is going to be a resource parent, and so they do this whole like psychosocial analysis, and so right, kind of like I talked about my HIV status, talked about kind of like where I am with it, how I cope with it, and that was that kind of. She was like, okay, check, okay, let's go on, move to the next thing. So like I know I was a little nervous, just kind of like, oh, they're gonna make a big deal about it or something like that, but no, it was kind of, it was actually a really positive experience, and the fact that they didn't care.
That's great.
Mine was similar to yours because like they went through all the questionnaire. The only thing that they asked me, because it did come up and I explained to them, the only thing they asked me was, so in the case of anything happened to you, like who would take care of the child? So that did come up, and that's when I was like, well, I have the backing of my sister, I have the backing of my parents, so like they would be well taken care of if anything was to happen to me. But other than that, it was no problems at all. And that's why I say I'm so thankful that I did do it in New York, because it would have been totally different trying to like navigate this process in Georgia. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, I could see that. And it seems like they should ask you that kind of question no matter whether you're living with HIV or not, because anything can happen to any of us any day. Like it's not, you don't have to be living with HIV to, for something to happen to you. So
it was very easy process for me as well. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared because I was like, my story all over the place, and they're gonna be like, wait a minute, them children do not need to go on her own. But they asked, and believe it or not, from till this day, they trying to give me more kids. So it's an easy process. They keep giving me these emails. I don't know if y'all get any emails, but I keep getting emails after emails every single day. Do you want this child? Do you want these siblings? So they ask you and they keep it moving. And I'm grateful that I see that.
Wow. That's really good to know, because I'm sure that there are plenty of folks living with HIV who would be interested in fostering and adopting. And it actually makes me sad that they keep reaching out to you, because it just shows that there's such a need. It shows that you're doing a great job, but it also just shows the need that's there. And that's always really sad to me.
Definitely needed. It's definitely needed.
Yeah. That's really, really needed. What are some things that you think it's important for a woman living with HIV who's considering fostering or adopting to know ahead of time, or to think about?
I think that you do have to really be in the right mind frame and the mindset, because your life does change. Because mine happened overnight. Like, it was one minute, I was free, didn't have any kids, and then like, oh, there's a 10-year-old baby. So like, you do have to like realize that like a lot of stuff that you used to do, you once did, you're not going to be able to do them as freely as you did before. And hopefully you won't want to do a lot of things you used to do freely before. But yeah, to definitely, think beyond themselves, because it's not about them anymore. It's about you and that child. And just be prepared. Like I say, it has been a roller coaster of a ride for me. I've learned a lot about myself through this process. I learned, a lot of things that, I had to unlearn during this process. So all I say is just, buckle up. It's a learning experience, and I wouldn't change anything for the world about it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything specific for folks living with HIV. I think just adoption in itself, right, can be very complicated and varying experiences and difficulty. Definitely, but kind of like, since I started off as a foster parent, I didn't know how long it was going to be, so I didn't take my full family leave, because I'm like, what if I have to do this again in 6 months? But even just the 6 weeks that I took off, like, it was like daily visits, lots of paperwork, lots of people coming by your house to check, and all of that kind of stuff. And so Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, it isn't something particularly for people living with HIV. I think it's just more so, like Octavia was saying, like that you got to be like mentally prepared for how different it is, that it's not, right, kind of like when you like birth the child and then you come home and then that's it. Like, no, you have people kind of like calling you, emailing you, visiting you, like asking you for additional paperwork and all of that. And so it's, yeah, it's a lot of extra responsibility.
Yeah, and I was also just thinking that, like, if you're having a child biologically, you've got sort of 9 months to wrap your head around the fact that this is coming and to like adapt and I guess when you decide that you're going to foster, for example, does it happen pretty quickly usually? Like once you're like,
well,
sort of system?
I think it also depends though, right? Like I think mine actually happened really fast, even though I tried to take it slow. I think I started just even like I went to an orientation to learn about the process in January, and I had a baby in my home in June. And that was me taking everything like super slowly. So, I mean, even though it can happen very quickly, like you still have time to like prepare. But yeah, but then from one day you don't have a kid and then the next day you do. So it's a little bit of both.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Is there anything else you all would like to add or any considerations for folks out there?
I would just say, if you're thinking about it, like, do your research, and if your heart is in the right place, I say go for it. And I definitely want to tilt my hat to Grissel and Monique, because it takes a special woman, to step in the place of, children that have, experience like hurt and pain from the people that are supposed to provide, that love and support for them. So I definitely, tip my hat to you ladies, because it's not easy and it's not for the faint of heart. So I just wish we had 1,000 more, mothers like you two. But for those that are out there that are contemplating it, I'm like, if you are in the right mind frame, I definitely say do it. There are children out there that need the love, need support, and they will be glad to have someone that cares for them and to be able to call them mom. So yeah.
To piggyback off what Octavia just said, you have to have the heart to want to do it. If you think if you're in it for financial reasons, oh no. You have to truly have a heart and passion for children. You definitely can't do it, because the state gonna do this and do that. No. You gotta really just show selfless service and really just want to care and love that child the way he or she deserve to be loved. You really have to just have that passion for it. And you have to, even fostering, you have to be prepared, because they may not be with you just for a week. They may end up being with you for 5 months, a year. I know people around here who's fostering and they have that child still, longer than 6 months. So you have to be mentally ready for all that. You can't be like, oh, I have a child for a week, I'm good, because things may not go well and you may end up having that child even longer. So like Octavia said, it changes our plans, it changes our schedules, and you just got to be ready for that challenge.
Yeah, and I think even just building off of that, right? Like, it does sound kind of scary, right? Kind of like, as like Octavia shared, in terms of like when you have a child and it's uncertain and then they're no longer with you, and how heartbreaking that is, right? Kind of like that's all real, but it's also just such a worthwhile like emotional risk to take. And through the orientation, one of the things they kept telling us was, right, that like, yes, that could be a possibility, but it's kind of like they prefer that like adults are the ones going through that, and it's not children bouncing around, right? And that we can develop the mechanisms, that we hopefully have the mechanisms to be able to cope with that kind of loss, whereas like hopefully children aren't having to like be bounced around from foster home to foster home or group home to group home. And so just being able to like, yeah, put yourselves out there, even though it does sound like really scary to put yourself out there like that. Like it's still such a valuable, rewarding experience.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for sharing that with us. And so we do have one more panel that's going to be coming up in a few minutes. I wanted to go ahead and show a video that we produced. It's been a couple of years already, but it's still a good one. So I'm going to actually share my screen in just a moment and let our wonderful panelists take themselves out of the spotlight. So yeah, let me get this loaded up here. Folks, stay with us. So our next panel is actually going to be about raising kids who respond to stigma, and Monique is going to be back with us for that one. And Masonia should be with us as well. And Evany is going to be sharing some of her experiences. But before we start that panel, I'm going to share this video. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Here we go. All right.
My daughter is 14. She'll be 15 in a couple months, and she loves Jordans and getting her nails done, and she loves snuggles and being sarcastic and watching Netflix with me. She's literally my best friend. Like, she's a little version of me. And I also have to remember she's her own person because she has a lot of her dad in her too. Interestingly enough, I never wanted to have kids. So it was a surprise. I was always raised, don't bring home no babies, is what my grandma said. But I was not taught how to prevent that from happening. Unbeknownst to myself, I was HIV positive at the time. I just hadn't got tested. So because I became a mother is how I found out my status. Had I not given birth to my daughter, I would have never gotten tested. I was 21 when I had my daughter and 21 when I was diagnosed. Yeah.
I love children. I've always loved children. I even did foster care. So my first child was planned. She was planned. My second child was not planned. So, but I love children. My oldest daughter is 27 and my youngest daughter is 16. They're beautiful, both of them. Every time I look at them, I'm like, gosh, they're so pretty. My 16-year-old is getting ready to graduate high school next year, and she's doing really good. She wants to be a veterinarian, and she shadows at the veterinarian clinics. She's in cheer. She works at Subway. When I had my first child, I was 21. I was 21 years old. Yeah, and we planned it. Yeah, you look at this little baby in your arms, and you're like, is she really mine? Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. When I was pregnant with the first one, I wasn't diagnosed with HIV. When I was pregnant with the second one, I was so paranoid. I was paranoid. I almost got rid of the child. Almost got rid of her until there was an infectious disease doctor that sent me to a hospital, a doctor that specialized in women diagnosed with HIV that were pregnant. And if I never drove an hour to that hospital, I probably wouldn't have her today. So it was different. I was always paranoid, always scared, always thinking something was wrong. I was always in emergency. So, but I really feel that was because I had HIV. I was always thinking something was wrong with the baby because I was still paranoid that she was going to end up contracting HIV after they told me she was negative. It took about a year after she was born because I kept thinking, what if it still comes up? What if it still comes up? And then, well, I'll say even after, when she would get sick from the ages from 2 to 5, I would always think, well, maybe I should take her to the doctor to make sure she doesn't have HIV. And my husband used to say, she doesn't have HIV. You're just still paranoid, but it had been like 5 years. She didn't have HIV. So
motherhood was like a double whammy. I went through like 5 months of hiding it. And then obviously I'm showing, so I have to start talking about what's happening and then what life will look like after that. And adoption was not a option I could sit with very well. I know I was down a lot. I know I was hiding from myself a lot. So postpartum depression was a beast, and no one had defined that. I just remember looking at this little person, feeding her and crying and not being able to stop. And then thankfully that didn't last long because I have a support system that was starting to notice, like, this isn't like Kamaria. Like, my mom was like, you know, we understood you were going through things, and there was some anger and some tension and resentment, just because of secrets that I kept. But then when the HIV diagnosis came, like 2 weeks after I brought the baby home, that shifted how everybody responded to me. So the postpartum was, I guess, easier for others to help me through. But that's not what I was thinking about through the postpartum. It was just like, there's a person, like there's this person that just came out of me and I don't know what to do. And then also I was really in some stigmatizing mindsets. Like, I thought I was going to die. My doctor hadn't told me that. I just had that in my head and trying to figure out, also during this time, trying to figure out if my daughter had contracted HIV as well. So spending that whole year getting her tested and giving her treatment took a toll on me. Every day I woke up, I'm like, I'm still alive. I'm still here. So maybe the doctor was right. And maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was. What helped me kind of push through that is the more research I did, the more I found out women weren't talking about it, especially women that looked like me, that were single moms. I didn't quite declare advocacy on that day, but I definitely knew that it wasn't something I was going to let keep me like hidden. I don't like feeling invisible. I also don't like the spotlight either, but I just definitely didn't want a health condition to make me feel like I couldn't be myself anymore. I was always the quiet girl. I didn't say much. I didn't do anything. I was always smiling and laughing. So for me to say something like that, it would turn into like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry type of thing. And then that opened the window for me to educate and let you know I don't need sympathy. I just need you to kind of check why that was your first reaction to have sympathy. I appreciate the compassion if that's where it's framed, but it's been interesting, especially with dating. Like, I would blurt it out just to see if the guy was really, are you interested in me, or were you just interested in getting in the bed? And usually it was just getting in the bed. So I was like, okay, moving on.
It was hard for me. It was really hard in the beginning. So no one knows, who's going to struggle when they're contracting HIV. Counseling helped. I went to counseling and I went to group at the hospital, and just my family. My family's always been there for me. So yeah, it was tough. I used to say, if I'm not here, who's going to take care of her? So I had to keep going so I can be the one to take care of her and not anybody else. Yeah, it was my daughter that got me through HIV. Yeah. Well, talking to my kids about my status, my oldest daughter, I started talking to her. I told her when she was 8. She didn't really understand too much, but as the years went by, for me always talking about it, she began to understand what it was. And when she got older, she always says, oh, I forget you have it. So she doesn't really think about it. And then my youngest daughter, I told her when she was 13. And the way that I told her was because I'm in school and I have taken a public speaking class, and I did public speaking and talked about my status in my class. So I took the video and I put it on my laptop. And I said, come here, mommy wants to show you something. So she sat down and played the video, and I let her listen. And when it was over, I turned around and I said, well, and she went, I don't care. But I think that was because I talked about HIV and STDs and pregnancy all through the years while my kids were growing up.
First was just all she heard with the
I never thought that I would be here this long. And as the years progressed, and 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I'm still alive. No one said I was gonna be alive. It just said take this medication, and I'm still alive. And so I think just from living after so long, it just went away. It went away.
So my daughter she's been aware of HIV since she was a baby. And I always tell people, her understanding has been per age and maturity. First was just all she heard were the letters, and she knew the letters made mommy not feel well. Now she's a teenager, and she's been involved in like teen pregnancy prevention. And the leaders of those organizations have asked me to come in and do education. And I'll turn to her, and I'm like, they want me to talk about HIV, and I'm candid. You're at an age now where your peers are aware. So I kind of give her the opportunity to make a decision if this is a world she wants to be brought into. So her understanding is supportive. She gets what I do. I've asked her to try to define like what I do, and she's like, you travel a lot. And it's, she's very sarcastic, but I know at the end of the day, she's very supportive. And I know she's checked a couple of friends about stigmatizing language. So at least she's doing that much, but I don't put pressure on her to take this on as a banner at all. I remember my 21st birthday, just sitting outside. I think I was 8 months pregnant. Yeah, I was 8 months pregnant, and knowing all my friends are out partying, because all my friends are like, our birthdays are clustered, so they were all having a good time, and I was sitting there thinking my life was about to end. But actually my life was beginning, because not only because I was going to give birth, but then find out my diagnosis and have a whole other chapter that I didn't know was going to be attached to motherhood.
I love that video, and I love Kamaria and Davina. And so, yeah, that's actually a pretty good segue into our next panel, I think. And I'm gonna ask my next panelist to come back on camera if possible. And I will be spotlighting some of you, and then I'll bring in your kids. Evany, join me here. Let's see, look, and they've got their kids with them. Woo, 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 woo. All right, I saw Masonia over here. Wait, where did Masonia go? Oh, there you are. Sorry, I'm playing with Zoom here. Why is it not letting? Oh yeah, you have to turn on your video for me to spotlight you. So I know, Masonia, I see your son is here, but I think he will need to turn on his video if he's willing. Otherwise he can still, oh, there he is. Okay, now I think I should be able to add him. There we go. Yay, everybody's here. Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let me get back to my screen here. Yeah, so I'm just gonna first have, because we do have a couple of new folks with us, and we've got some kids with us, so give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. Whoever would like to go first. Evany, you're muted.
I was asking my son if he wanted to go first. These kids about to act like they can't talk. Go ahead and introduce yourself, son.
My name is Kawan Nelson, and
how old are you?
16. I'm 16, and I'm in 10th grade.
Where you live?
I live in Texas.
Go ahead. My bad. The kids are introducing themselves, right? Okay.
My name is Selena. I am 17 years old.
Talk a little louder.
I am 17 years old, and I am in 11th grade.
All right. Hello. My name is Monique Traylor, son of Masonia Traylor. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm 17 years old and I attend Grady High School.
Awesome. Well, welcome to all the young people. Masonia, you're a twin. I don't feel so bad now. I have a twin too, but my twin is over here trying to hide.
Masonia, you can introduce yourself too, since you weren't on.
Yeah,
Monique was on the last panel, but you're new, so.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't even think of that. So, hi everybody. My name is Masonia Traylor. I live in Atlanta. You see, my son and I are in separate spaces. We had a last minute vacation. So he's in Virginia while I'm in Georgia. But it's a pleasure to be here today. And once again, I'm the mother of Malachi Traylor. And this is our first time ever doing something publicly on camera for he and I. So thank you guys for having us.
Thank you so much for being here.
Too.
I know, it is the first. It's exciting.
I don't know if I've ever seen this happen anywhere, ever. So thank you to all of the young people for agreeing to come on and have the conversation. So the first thing I would love to, ask you guys is, when do you first remember hearing or learning something about HIV? What did you hear or learn? Anybody can start.
I first heard about HIV from my mom because I'm adopted. She told me like a couple years ago. And I was just like, I never knew somebody could go through this, like go through stuff like this. And I was shocked because I never thought of her to go through something like this, because I used to think she was just a wonderful person who didn't have to go through stuff like this.
I'll go next. So for me, the first time I heard about HIV was from my mother. Just a random day outside of school, sun is shining. It was beautiful and all, but when we got back home, my mom was crying. I didn't know for what reason. I don't remember or recall. And I asked her what's wrong, and she started telling me about her story about HIV after my little sister was born. It was just random, sprung on me. I didn't like it because I thought it was like contagious, so I said, get away from me. I didn't understand that at all. But she said it's okay. She's taking her meds. Still gonna take care of me and my little sister. She's getting help, and yeah.
The first time I heard about it, I seen my mama on the news. I seen her like on magazine and stuff talking about it. So that's when my first time I ever heard about it.
That's a really Evany story.
I don't think we talked about it after that, but I was public when he was born, so he didn't really get a choice to kind of opt in to me being a public, a person who living with HIV who was out in the public.
Yeah, and so I mean, for the moms, when did you, first of all, is that sort of how you remember them learning about HIV? And then I guess as well, like when and how did you decide that it was time to talk to them about it?
As far as myself, of course, I have 3 biological boys. They're all teenagers as well. So before the girls came into my home, I told my boys at a young age, when I came open about my status, I decided to go ahead and I wanted to be my kid's advocate. I was like, nobody gonna tell my story the way I can tell my story to my children. And I didn't want my kids to grow up, and being that the boys were athletes, I didn't want them to go to school and be like, your mama. I wanted to be the first one to tell them, and how they took it. They were very, they understood. I educated them. And till this day, they're my little advocates. They'll fight someone right now if if someone say something about their mama. When the girls came, I told them as soon as I adopted them, as soon as they came into the home. And like she said, she just, you know, they got educated, and all 5 of my teenagers, they're very well educated. You know, they stand right beside me, and they're open just like I am. They don't mind telling people, you know, yes, that's my mama. And so we love each other no matter of my status.
Kind of like Monique, as far as like the reasoning why, like making sure that, you know, your child knows before anybody else's was definitely one of the reasons why I wanted to share with Malachi. But even though he says, I wanted to see how, I didn't want to like prep him. I wanted to see what he was saying, how he recalls things. But the way that I told him about my status was we were headed to the AIDS walk. And it was the first year that I had been participating in the AIDS walk since I was his age. And I had been diagnosed for about a year by then. And so before we would head to the AIDS walk, I wanted him to at least understand why we were going. And I knew that at one point that I would need to disclose to him if I was deciding to go public and become more involved and create some more awareness here in Atlanta around HIV. And when I told him that, you know, I said, Malachi, you know, mommy takes medicine every day, right? He says, yes. He's about 7 years old at the time. And no, about 8. He's 7 or 8, one of the two. And he says, yes, I know you take medicine. And I said, well, do you know why I take it? Because I had made a commitment to myself that if you don't ask me, then I'm not going to tell you about my HIV status, unless it's, you know, something I need to do for a purpose, right? So I wanted to get him to ask me. So I asked him, you know, do you know why I take the medications? And he says, no, I don't know why. So, okay, well, you know, he said, well, why? Why do you take the medicine? I said, I take this medicine because I have HIV. And he immediately, unknowingly, he doesn't know anything about HIV, says to me, well, I'm not going to hug you or kiss you or touch you anymore. And he starts to back away from me. He knows nothing about HIV, and this is what it is. And I, you know, I choke up a little bit and, you know, feel like I got tears coming out, but then I tell myself, this is a kid, you know, this is the kid, you know, I brought you in this world, I could take you out of too, right? That was, I had to pull it back together. And, you know, after I told him, I said, no, baby, you can't get it like that. I said, you know, you can't get it like that. I said, you can still hug and kiss and touch. And I started explaining to him everything. And I told him, you know, about the AIDS walk that we were preparing to go to. He just knew we were going to a walk to help people. And he asked me, was all the people going to be there have AIDS? And I said, no, some will, some won't. You won't necessarily know unless you ask them like you asked me. And so after I explained it to him being a kid, he goes, well, I guess I'll hug and kiss you still. You know, he comes to me and gives me a hug. And that was my first time disclosing to him. But that was the hardest and probably the most stigmatizing experience I had, like within my immediate space and circle from a family member. But he was a kid. He didn't know. So very different from what he says he recalls.
So with Kawan, he was, I had Kawan while I was living with HIV. And his birth actually started and prompted my advocacy because I had to get more information about just, you know, being a mother, and I had to get some support. So I had to tell other people. So shortly after I had him is when I started doing a lot of advocacy. But I also have a 28-year-old, and my 28-year-old, I had to tell that I was living with HIV, and that was, it was hard, but he was getting classes in school. He was getting sex ed classes in school. And when I told him I was living with, I take the medicine, I asked him why, same as Masonia, do you know why I take this medicine? And he said no. So I told him it was because I was living with HIV. And he said, oh, Ma, that's it. He was like, you can live with HIV as long as you can take your medicine. But I thought you had cancer and you was going to die, because I had been being depressed and sick. And back then, it was a lot of pills. So he thought it was something something else. I'm not going to say more serious. But from that, he accepted it and went on. As far as this one, he has grown up hearing HIV. I never told him about me because he was a talking kid. He talked a lot when he was younger. And I didn't want him to go to school and say, my mom is living with HIV, because I didn't want him to be stigmatized and not know how to deal with that. So I didn't tell him until he asked me. Now, he said he heard about it on a webinar or something, but he seen me on TV, which is possible. I have no idea where he seen me or what he seen me on, but that's possible. And we didn't talk about it because I probably was like, let me ignore that because I don't want him to go to school and talk, although I was on TV. But I remember the first time I talked to him about it was when we moved to Texas. He came to my job and he seen all the stuff around. It was a job helping people living with HIV. And he said, "Mom, you always talking about HIV and you always around people with HIV. What do you have HIV?" And then I started laughing uncontrollably because of the way he asked me. And I told him I did. And he was like, "Oh, okay." And we went on about our business. So I guess for him, and he can, say if it's true or not, HIV has just been a part of his, like he's been hearing it a part of his whole life. So that was my first experience with him. So I know we have another question. Jenny, my computer is stuck, so you're gonna have to.
Yeah, and also I just want to remind folks who are watching that you can ask questions. And actually, I think I did see a question pop up over here from Krista. Yeah, we've heard from some advocates who are public that they withdrew a bit from public advocacy when the kids got older. Did it ever become an issue when the kids reached adolescence?
As far as my children, I think that's the question. I haven't heard them come home or anything with any issues like in school or when they're out on playing sports. If anything, my children, they've used my experience and my story. Like if they have to do a book report or something, like they write about my life. They let the teachers know, like, okay, you guys want me to write this is what I'm going to write, or whatever. So it's been kind of, they're advocates. They don't have, so it's kind of like we share my life even in the school, so everyone knows us that way. So they had like, I remember one of my sons had like one issue where someone said that's why your mom had AIDS one time, but it wasn't, he controlled it, he handled it pretty well. Other than that, we haven't had any issues so far, thank God.
Malachi, can you speak to that a little bit?
What do you mean in particular?
Like as far as you experiencing stigma as you gotten older, like even though Evany was saying that, her son had been accustomed to and used to hearing HIV in a household growing up. I know that you've experienced the same thing, right? But in what ways have you gotten like backlash about me being so public about my status, like hearing negative things about people living with HIV or myself?
That's a big one to swallow. Let's see. Well, just hearing about the negative stuff about HIV, I didn't really think much of it because I knew the truth. That's all that mattered because she's my mother. So I know her story and I know other people's stories who I've gotten to learn their stories as well. So it didn't matter to me.
One thing I would say is my son, I wish they was here, but when they were younger, after they learned my status, when they saw things on TV, you know, that would bother them. They would get a little teary-eyed if they saw something that was dealing with HIV or AIDS. I can see them getting a little, you know, emotional or whatever, and that bothered them. But I try to redirect them and let them know, like, what you see on, you know, on TV, mom is, you know, I'm strong and I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what you reading on TV and what you're watching, you know, I'm going to be okay. So I noticed, like, when they see things dealing with HIV or AIDS, it may have bothered them. But now that they're older, like Malachi said, he just, you know, my children are the same way. They're just like, you know, that's our mom, and we hear, we're educated, we're okay. It's okay.
You know,
oh, go ahead.
You want to go ahead, Evany?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say with Malachi, I was really nervous about like being so public that I would immerse myself into his environment so that it could be a norm. Like, it's not, you know, oh, that's Malachi's mom living with HIV. It's like, you know, oh, there's Malachi's mom right there. And then if you decide to have additional conversation, you might mention, yeah, don't she have HIV? You know, does she do work in HIV? You know, something like that. But I do remember when one of his he had a football team in middle school, and one of the threats that one of the students had mentioned to get them to get quiet, he was like, all right, the next person that talked, your mama got HIV. And then everybody started getting quiet. And I had to, it threw me off because I was having a conversation with my son and his little sister trying to get them squared away. And I said, yo, that's you don't do that. You don't say that. I said, I'm living with HIV. I said, that's not nice. You know, I had to correct that. But then I realized, whoa, did I just throw my son under the bus because I haven't gone to his school to speak and do education, but I've gone to hundreds of other schools to do the work. And then, you know, my son looked at me and you know, Malachi, he just was like, Mom, what's the big deal? Like, I've gone with you to go speak. I'm used to that. I'm not mad that they said that about you. I'm just mad they said it in general. Like, I don't care what they say back to me. I just, you know, don't like that people do that. But I remember Malachi getting upset at least one time when he was younger, like Monique said, and I had to just do that too. Just, you know, redirect him and say, not about death in particular or sickness, but about stigma and how people talk negatively about HIV, right? I explained to Malachi that does it wipe your butt? Does it feed you and make sure you eat? Does it bathe you? Do those words do any of those things for you? Does it take it away from you? He says no. And I said, well, don't worry about it. It's okay. They'll get educated. And you know, I'm here. So it doesn't matter. It's not taken away from your mom. It's not taken away from you. And I think once that just kind of clicked for him, he just let it ride. Like, he's non-confrontational anyway, but I think just being educated and making it something that's a norm, it doesn't seem like it's such a terrible thing.
So my oldest son went to high school when I was talking in schools. And when I decided to start speaking in schools, I had to ask him if he was okay with that. I had to talk to him about me going to different high schools in the city and talking about me living with HIV. And he said, Mama, I don't care. Just don't come to my school because I might have to fight somebody. Because he's not non-confrontational. Big baby likes to fight, Jenny. But eventually, a couple of years in, he said, Mom, these people are getting sexually transmitted diseases at my school, and I need you to come and talk. And he set it up so I can come and talk to his school. And I talked multiple times at his school and became friends with a lot of his friends. I think he dealt with more stigma, and I'm sure he dealt with somebody saying or hearing something about HIV. He dealt with it more than this one, but I don't know. Have you ever dealt with anybody saying anything negatively about me or HIV?
No, not that I've never. People know. I don't go out just telling people, but people know. But I never had anybody say nothing negative about it to my face, at least.
If they did say it to your face, what you gonna do?
This is live.
Well, let me ask this then. Malachi, what would you say if someone says something negative about HIV?
Well, I know I had situations, many situations like that for sure. Sorry. Trying to collect my thoughts here. What would I say? Right. Okay. So, it's not I would say something like, it's not all right to say that if you don't really understand it, you know. It'll be nice for you to get educated, or someone, or even I myself can teach you a little something about it, you know, because miscommunication can go a long way. And so I don't want to start anything or have someone else start anything else about HIV, the stigma around it.
I think one of the things with our children, especially the one, you know, us who are public about our status and who talk about it a lot, is we're very comfortable talking to our children about it, and they've heard about it for years. So for my son, I asked him, you know, what has me living with HIV changed your life any? And for him, it's just, life is just normal. Like, these kids' life, their lives are normal. I think they know a little bit more about sex education, and, you know, they know a lot about, we talk a lot about sex, and we're comfortable talking to our children about sex. So it being normal for him, he doesn't even like, my oldest son used to make sure I took my medicine. My oldest son used to be like, "Are you okay?" If I was sick, he would get all, "Are you okay?" thinking I was gonna die or something, and I just had a cold. But this one, he'll peek in my room and be like, "You need some water or something?" Like, he really is not a big deal for him. He doesn't have those same fears because it's always been a part of his life. And I think that's one of the most important things with raising children, is to make sure you're communicating with them age appropriately about what's happening to them, and, you know, letting them know, because kids are afraid when their parents are taking medicines and they don't know why. So explaining to them age appropriately what's going on and why it's going on. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's like not a huge deal to the kids. I don't know if y'all think that's true or not for you guys.
Yes, same here. I think my children, they're so accustomed to me. They see me, you know, traveling, speaking about HIV so much that they're just like, "Oh, that's mom." And like, same with me. If I'm laying down or something, they'll open the door. "Mom, you all right? You know, you short sleeping a long time. All right, you all right? I'm all right." You know, I think with my children, their biggest thing is, you know, who will accept me for me? That's their biggest thing around here. My boys and my daughters, they're just like, you know, if I'm out dating or something, they're worried about who is going to accept me. You know, that's their biggest thing. Like, "Oh, if that person don't like you, they can't come up in this house." You know, if they're judging you because of your status, they ain't coming up in here. My boys be ready to fight. You know, if she don't want to be your friend, then we'll be your friend, mom. You know, that's pretty much how it goes in here. But other than that, you know, and if sometimes I can't find my medicine. Sometimes I'll be putting my bottle all over the place, y'all. Can't find it, and they'll be like, "Stop what y'all doing up in here. We got to find mom's medicine," you know, and they'll help me find it, and we keep it moving. So I think it's just natural here. So it's just like, that's mom. She's good. We good.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to, I don't usually have I have some questions, but not these questions in particular to Malachi and Marissa, because I have my baby girl too, but I was pregnant with her when I found out that I was positive. So her experience is her own, but with Malachi being the oldest, I know that I've been very ill for the past 2 years, and it has not been on the account of HIV, but I've like had to ask questions because all of the illnesses that I'm having to face have all been like high level life threatening and make me question my own mortality. But I often, am quietly concerned, like, how are my kids doing? But I know that Malachi, he does a lot of the checking on me. Both of them have to find my medications, but they don't necessarily know which medication is which yet. What do I take for what? I'll just describe the bottle and say, can you go get it for me? And I recently had to sit down and talk to them and explain to them, about potentially having to call 911 if they see this going on with me, or, helping me to take my medications because I'm becoming forgetful about certain ones, and needing some additional support within my household as a single parent. So I wonder, Malachi, what are your thoughts based on what Monique was saying about her children and Evany as well? When it comes to like, are you afraid that I'll get sick or anything like that when it comes to HIV, as opposed to, me having the heart attack and the blood clots right now?
I say the heart attack and the blood clots overweigh your HIV status of how you feeling. I just know my mom is strong, and she has been pulling through ever since she was diagnosed. So, I have faith in her, and I just help her any way I can.
That's beautiful, actually. Evany, you were asking a question earlier that made me think of something that I was curious because you're talking about how your kids are probably better educated about sex than other kids their age. I was actually curious for the kids here. Are you all learning, like, what is sex ed in school nowadays? I haven't been in high school in a really long time, and so I'm kind of curious what they are teaching now. Do they teach about HIV, and if so, like, what kind of information are they giving you?
They haven't taught it yet in my school, so like I really don't know.
No sex ed in your school? Wow.
They taught it 6th grade year and never again after that. So.
But do you?
Yeah, I know.
Can you teach it?
I don't want to.
Do you think you've learned about sex ed from me?
From you, I learned more from you than the school. The school really it was more of it was 6th grade year, so it was more jokes, right? With the class than a learning experience, really.
For me, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Actually, I've been learning from my mom since I just got here and been going to school recently. So I've mostly learned from my mom. Like, it's not good to do this and that, and why not?
She mostly pretty much learned from me because the school here, the boys have learned, yes, from the school, but she's learning more from, me as an advocate.
For me, I never learned anything or even heard anything about HIV from the schools I went to. Not once. I hear people bring it up because they hear it from outside of school, but not about the other schools that I went to had anything about sex ed. They had health and they mentioned HIV, but nothing really to go really in depth with. I hear everything from my mother.
Wow. I think that says a lot. That's actually really concerning that we've got 3 kids in high school here, and they're well educated because of who their moms are and what their moms teach them, but they're not getting it at school. I find that concerning. No wonder there's so much stigma. And
yeah, that's one of the things that it's one of the policies that we all, I think, try to advocate for, is comprehensive sex ed in schools, because there's still a large amount of young people who are still being diagnosed with HIV, and there's no reason for them to, for that to be happening, because we know, I'm sure Monique and Masonia both know that as long as you teach kids about that and give them the options, if you teach them and tell them what's going to happen, they typically make the good option and not try to hide it from them. So I learned that, with my oldest son is very popular. He was very popular in high school. He started having sex at a young age. He actually came to me and told me, because I had conversations with him about comprehensive sex ed, and he made good decisions, which I'm gonna be honest and say was shocking to me, because he's a very rambunctious young man. But he's 28 now. He still doesn't have any children by choice, because he didn't want to, and he knew what to do. He could come to me anytime and say, I need condoms, and I was fine with it. He can come to me anytime and say it. I ask him all the time to purposely make him uncomfortable. I know that everybody, but he's like, oh, Mom, not doing it. But I just want him to know that it's okay. Like, I understand. It's your choice. It's your body. You have control over it. And I want you to know that I'm a safe, open, I won't get angry. And I want to make sure you stay safe by coming to me, knowing you have a trusted source. So I think I always love and encourage parents to do that with their children. And even if they can't, I'm the auntie in my family. If mama don't want to do it, some of my friends don't want to do it, they know to send the kids to Auntie Evany and talk to them about it. Because I just think, I know if you let kids know and have conversations with them as they're aging, that they make better sexual health choices as they get older.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to even remember what we learned when I was in school. I do remember having sex ed at some point. I can't remember if it was middle school or high school. I do remember a lot of giggling about penis and vagina and all the words that make. So we were probably like 12 or 13. So the age where that makes you laugh to hear people say it out loud. But yeah, that we definitely need better sex ed in school. And Evany, it's funny, I remember being in the back of a cab with you one time when Big Baby called looking for condoms. I was so impressed that you had it's amazing that you have that kind of relationship, that you can have those conversations, because there's no way I ever could have asked my parents for condoms. They were, what? You're having sex? What? That never would have happened. So that's really amazing. I guess to the moms, if you had to do it all over again, in terms of, talking to your kids about your status, about HIV, about being public, the way you were, is there anything you would do differently, or?
I guess I'll start. I think I definitely would have to go to, or made it a stronger priority to go to my son's schools first. I got a lot of pushback where I lived versus some other areas that I was successful to being able to get into the school. But surprisingly, a lot of the schools that had the highest rates of newly reported HIV infections amongst the youth, I got a lot of pushback to be able to get into those schools. There was a lot of bureaucracy and everything. But I think that I'm glad I didn't wait. It was definitely something that allowed me to mold the idea and understanding in his world, for his perspective, and for my daughter as well. Now, my daughter on the other end, because she was only 2-3 years old, hearing HIV all the time, I do remember crossing guard at her elementary school that she's currently at, asking me, hey mom, what do you do for a living? And then my daughter says very loudly, my mommy's HIV. And the crossing guard is trying to get kids across the street. And she just she breaks down crying. And I have to grab the stop sign and hand it to Marissa, walk in the street and hold it to get the kids to come across. And she's just in tears. So my daughter really didn't know and understand, there's any I guess it's just fluid for her. She didn't know that there can be stigma or anything like that. It was just so normal. So I wouldn't change anything. I wish I wasn't as nervous. I wish I hadn't cried, but I think all of those raw emotions and giving that to him is what has helped shape and mold his perspective around not only just me living with HIV, but even if he wanted to date someone living with an HIV or AIDS diagnosis, he has the confidence, the education, the compassion to be supportive because I started him young. So I'm grateful that I did it.
Same here. I don't think I would change anything. I think I'm comfortable. My children were smaller. They're teenagers now, but they were young when I told them my status. And now they're, like Masonia said, they're prepared and they're educated. Should they cross that path of someone, should they date someone that is positive or have friends or other people that they know that is positive, I was able to share with them what they need to know about people who are living with HIV. And also they're watching my lifestyle, so they know that, hey, we still live normal and healthy lives. So I'm confident in me sharing my status at a young age with my children.
I wouldn't change anything with him, but I would change with my oldest son. I hid it from him for 2 years, and he was nervous. He was like seriously nervous that I was going to die of cancer. And I didn't know that because, well, I did tell people that. I told people when I first was diagnosed, they knew something was wrong. So I said I had cancer. And I didn't tell my son that because he was young, but he heard it and he feared that, I was going to die. So I would change that. I would actually tell him up front because it was more in my head that it was going to affect him than it was on him. I was so shocked when he was like, "That's all you got?" I was like, "All." So, a lot of times, children are way more resilient than we give them credit for, way more accepting than we give them credit for. So I would definitely just change that part about telling my oldest son. But other than that, I think I've done a great job as far as everything else.
Evany, can I say this? What you just said, I had said it on the last panel, like sometimes we're so worried about like our children, what they think about we as mothers. And they always do something like to remind us that, even though we're living with HIV, our children see our strength. And it's like they do something to remind us that we are amazing mothers, So I know my children, my girls, what they do, and they've been adopted into the home. But one thing these girls do every single night is, I have two girls. They'll give me a hug and they'll say, "Mom, I love you." And just those little words reminds me that I must be doing something right. Or they'll do something around the house. The boys will do something to remind me that, hey, we love you, Mom. In the midst of everything that you're going through, we're here for you. We worry about, I know I am too, Evany. I'm like, I wonder what they think about me. Am I doing this? Am I doing that right? But then we got so many thoughts in our heads, but then our kids is just like, "That's all you got, Mom? We good. Calm down. Calm your nerves down, Mom. You the one that's stressing and tripping." I'll be like, "Okay, I'll stop stressing and tripping." So yeah, our kids always do something to remind us that we're all are doing amazing.
They do, Monique. But as men have gotten older, they don't do anything except tell me I can't have a boyfriend.
Oh yeah, that too. Now the boys, they be like, Mom, you could date us. We your man. I'm like, no, I deserve to be happy.
You know, it's really interesting that both of you guys have said how the kids respond to it, because even with Malachi, I've had to lean onto him for support. And what I mean by that is, I remember being so upset and so angry about someone who I'm dating someone, and their friend, one of their best friends, rejected the notion of this friend dating me. They're like, nobody in their right mind would date someone knowing they have HIV, right? And so my son made it, and he lightened the mood by just starting to poke me. He was like, "What? I mean, what's gonna happen if I touch you? He started tickling me, and just like, what's gonna happen if I touch you? I'm gonna get HIV or something." Like, this dude is crazy. You sure he's old? You know, he's not a kid. He's a grown man. And that made me feel like, okay, this kid, he gets it. He gets it all the way. So I'm super appreciative of how kids can be that type of resilient and respond to us to keep us grounded. So grateful for that.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be wonderful if they all learned in school too about, you know, what HIV really is, especially what it is today, because I feel like so much of the information that they get when they don't have parents who are living with HIV telling them the truth about it, you know, I feel like they should be teaching U equals U in school. You know, kids need to know what it is. They need to know how to prevent it. And they also need to know that it's not, I mean, to me, it's really sad, Evany, that you felt like it was better to say that you had cancer than HIV. I mean, and from the reaction from your son, obviously cancer is the scarier thing. And so it's really sad that that's, you know, something that even happens. And yeah, I wish that, yeah, but you all are really helping get the information out there. And I think we can all agree that we need to advocate for more information for kids, because they can handle it. Your kids are living proof that kids can handle it. They can digest the information, they can make good decisions based on it,
and they can support their peers.
Yep.
100% support their peers.
Absolutely.
And making better decisions.
I guess my last question for you all is, if you were trying to give advice to other women living with HIV about when or how to talk to their kids about it, like what would be a few words of advice?
I would say just, you know, make sure you're at a comfortable place in your life to be ready to have that conversation with your children. Don't feel like you have to rush, because you know, we shared ours so quick. Well, whatever's comfortable for you, and have that discussion. Don't be afraid to have that discussion with your children.
Yeah, I would say, you know, take your time and do it at your pace, but don't drive yourself crazy thinking you know your kids better than anybody, but I wouldn't drive myself crazy thinking about your status will have a negative effect on them. My status has actually had a very positive effect on my children. And it is because, you know, I promised to take care of myself for them. The only thing really that made me survive it was my children. So I think being afraid, I remember that feeling of being afraid to tell my son that it was a feeling I never want to feel again. So I think if anybody is out there and they have that feeling, there are people who can help you make a plan, help you have a conversation if you want to and you don't know how to do it yourself. Just don't think the kids' life is gonna they're gonna completely worry about you. Kids are selfish a lot of times and they worry about themselves. That's just the nature of kids. You know, and one thing that I do know is, as long as you are taking care of yourself and you are functioning as a individual, like a normal individual, HIV will not have a major effect on your children. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
I think just like Evany and Monique both have stated, the first thing that came to mind is the notion that although we are public with our status and that our children are able to be confident and transparent about it because we are so public. And I think about multiple friends that I have that I just don't see them wanting, and I've heard them tell me they don't feel that they need to let their children know. It is something that they are dealing with, not the children. But I think that if you decide to tell them, it brings it closer to home to make them want to take a stronger stance in making sure that it's not just something that's happening over there or elsewhere other than right where you are. And they could easily become a source of your support system because they love you so dearly, right? I think that you should just do it when you're ready, no matter how old, how young you are, because when I'm sitting here looking at Monique's daughter, I'm looking at Evany's son, and I'm thinking about my son right now. And they have friends their age that are living with HIV because their moms did birth them positive, right? Their moms didn't have a successful undetectable viral load and birth an HIV-negative baby. So if they disclose, they may be disclosing their child's status as well. But I do think you can, if you decide to and when you choose to, whether you feel ready or not, there is a boatload of support. Those of us that are here right now, those who spoke earlier, we're here to, if not guide you, surround you with the level of support that you need to have that conversation with. So just reach out if you need that type of support. But I think it's something that if we speak up more about it to our children, it lessens the stigma more and more. So no matter how afraid you are, I think that if you choose to open up more about it with a support system, that right there will help the stigma around HIV altogether for the next generation to come, even after our teenagers, now they're kids. So that's what I think.
Absolutely. I think you all have really great words of wisdom, really great advice. Anything else the kids would like to share before we close out? No pressure.
I want to just say, as when we were promoting this, I actually seen a comment online that I don't let comments online bother me, but I want to say this. None of us force these children to be on this screen. I seen a comment where it said, oh, they're public about their status, so they're making their kids be public about their status too. Nope. We didn't force any of these children to be on the screen. We asked, they said, yeah, that's what it was. The reason why that is because these children live pretty normal lives, you know, like everybody else. So we don't put, you know, we don't promote stigma in our households. And I think people should just be more open about knocking down stigma. Like talking to kids helps. It's a new generation. So our children can help, your children can help, talking to the kids can help. Because we can definitely end new HIV diagnosis, and that helps with including the kids. That's all I can say.
Awesome. Well, thank you all.
No, I was just going to ask because Malachi is the type of person that he doesn't usually speak unless you call on him anyway. But Malachi, what would you say to Jenny's question as far as, or just a follow-up for what Evany said, as far as like, you know, I just asked you, I didn't ask you weeks ago when I found out about this. I just asked you, I think yesterday or the day before, would you be interested? You know, why did you say yes to this, this interview?
Well, if there's something involving HIV, a meeting or whatever, then I'll do it with my mom. That's I've just been brought up that way, and it's fun too. So yeah.
You are a really good son. I just want to say that you're a great son. I mean, you all have great kids, and yeah, none of them being forced, which is a really great thing because we don't want to force anyone to do anything. But you all have great kids, and you've raised them really well, and I think you're all wonderful role models for mothers in general, with or without HIV. So thank you all so much for being here. And we will be sending out the recording to everyone who registered. I know we actually had some folks in Australia, Positive Women's Network in Australia, who were really excited about this event, but it's like 5:30 in the morning. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning for them. So on a Saturday, because they're, ahead. So, we'll be sending out the recording to everyone who registered so that, if it was not a good time, they can still watch it. And we'll be sending some resources as well. Lots of resources from the Well Project around all of the things we've been talking about today. Everything from pregnancy and breastfeeding to fostering and adopting to raising kids and talking to kids about HIV. The Well Project has so many great resources. And PWN has some resources as well. And so we'll be sending out an email and sharing all of that. And so, yeah, just want to thank everyone so much for being with us. And Evany, you want to share those TikTok videos to close us out, because I thought they were really cute.
Sure. Let's see if I can.
Happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Mother's Day to everyone.
Happy Mother's Day.
See if I can share these Mother's Day videos for you. My computer is running slow.
Oh, you know what? Maybe I can pull them up.
Yeah, you might be able to pull them up from the
chat that we had earlier. Yeah. Okay, there's one, and then I pull up the other one. I thought these were really cute. Okay.
Bitch, you doing a good job. 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 Fuck that laundry. Fuck that dish. Take a break and shake that shit. Bitch, you doing a good.
Hey moms, your kids don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be happy. Yes, it's great to show them how to work hard and be strong and get things done, but they also deserve to see you at peace, full of joy, doing things that make you excited. Life isn't always about pressing on to the next goal. Here's the secret. Sometimes homework doesn't matter. Sometimes chores don't matter. Sometimes all they need is for you to show them rest, show them play, show them how to be present. So relax. You're doing a great job. Hey moms, your kids don't need you perfect. They just need you.
I thought those were really nice. Thank you all so much for being with us. And yeah, hope everyone has a wonderful Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day. Nice meeting everybody.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Bye.
See you later.